Chapter 1040. Madam Qin? Lawyer Bai stood beside Bojio. He could hear the voice. Even though it was soft, the three words made him arch a brow. He hadn't expected their relationship to reach such a stage. It seemed like the media wasn't up to speed. But the Qin family had actually agreed. Lawyer Bai hadn't expected this. After all, the Qin family only had one heir. Bojio kept her phone when she noticed Lawyer Bai's actions. She glanced at the shareholders who were watching her and smiled flirtatiously. Lawyer Bai will take over from now on. As for Boss Zhang, you can go wherever you want. The person who had been trembling from head to toe was stunned. The shareholders watched as the silver-haired youngster tugged at her collar as she walked out of the meeting room. Her arrogance seemed to have sealed He Honghua's position from now on. Just as Bojio had said, from now on, this place belonged to He Honghua. The employees who had been working there for many years were the happiest ones. At this moment, the technical executives who had wanted to jump ship to another company threw their resignation letters into the bin. There were also those business managers who were running business outside, drinking so much that they were puking on the toilet. After receiving the news, they were immediately stunned. Countless times he had asked himself if it was worth it. He was the one who dealt with the company's clients, but he couldn't compare to the connections that came from relatives. He had asked Fu Zhongyi about it, but every time, Boss Fu had replied that the company wouldn't mistreat him. He had to work hard and be content. One day he would be successful. Content. He had worked so hard, but he still couldn't compare to someone with connections. He had been loyal to the company for 5 years, and even till now, he had been renting a house. Every time he drank so much that he would have a headache even when he slept. He had been wondering if he should return to his hometown. But back then, when he had left school, he had told himself in high spirits that he wanted to settle down in this city so that he wouldn't let his parents down. But 1 year passed after another. Those dreams seemed to have been extinguished. Gradually, some people would tell you that no matter how hard you worked, you couldn't compare to someone with connections. But from now on, it was different. He wasn't sure why. When he heard this news, he finally believed the saying that there were always things in this world that could be obtained through hard work. The entire group changed from Fu's enterprise to He's. On the surface, it seemed that only the ownership of the company had changed. But in reality, those who were knowledgeable would understand that all large enterprises and groups had always been based on people. That was what Bojio did. Only when you know how to respect your employees will your employees work hard for the company. People should always be equal. He Honghua was still in a daze. Even though the meeting was over, she still had a lot of questions for her Jio. Lawyer Bai tidied up his documents and walked towards her. He Honghua called out to him, "Lawyer Bai Jio, Mr. He." Lawyer Bai was smart, summarizing everything with one sentence. Normal businessmen wouldn't think of this point, but boss only did it. It's probably because he learned from you. Not only must one be strong, but one must also know how to be grateful. That's why there's an employee share system. He Honghua was taken aback. Lawyer Bai didn't say much, leaving politely. But his words were clearly heard by all the employees. No one knew. It had been from that day onwards. A small group had soared because of their management philosophy. In a short span of 5 years, they had become the leading enterprise in Jiang City. At that time, people only knew that the executive director of He Group was a female entrepreneur who came from a village. Her career and family had been taken away, but she had learned some principles through the pain. These principles weren't just about building without destruction. Live for yourself and be grateful to those who had helped you. Of course, this was all in the future. Now, the most important thing was that young Master Qin was waiting at the reception area. Basically, all the female employees couldn't control themselves. They couldn't help but look over. Until a silver-haired young man walked out of the elevator and walked straight to young Master Qin's side. Then he reached out and tugged at his collar as if to breathe. Then he naturally bent down and kissed young Master Qin. It wasn't a kiss, it was a real kiss. "Have you been waiting for a long time?" Bojio watched as the Almighty waited for her. When she thought about how she would be able to kidnap him in 3 to 4 days, she couldn't control herself. When she kissed him, she noticed a sharp intake of breath. But since she had already kissed him, she couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. Hence, she sat down beside the Almighty, her lips lifting into an indescribable devilish smile. The beauty at the front desk had the clearest view. At this moment, she couldn't help swallowing her saliva. That was their Fu, young Master Fu. He actually dared to kiss young Master Qin in front of everyone. More importantly, young Master Qin wasn't angry. He didn't throw young Master Fu through the glass door. Instead, the coldness in his body disappeared. He placed the business magazine aside and reached out to pinch young Master Fu's face. What was going on? The strangest thing was the way young Master Fu had kissed young Master Qin and the way he had said it. It was as though a CEO was treating his newlywed sweetheart. Their positions were all messed up? Was it because of their young Master Fu? Before anyone could regain their senses, Qin Imo had already pulled Bo Jio's hand up. Qin Imo held onto her hand and stood up. His other hand was wrapped in a white bandage, making him look noble and aloof, unlike before. He didn't seem to care about the commotion he had caused. He walked past the Fu Corporation's employees and reached the entrance. There was already a chauffeur inside. The car didn't look very eye-catching from the outside. Compared to the cars in the Qin family's garage, this was probably the most low-profile. Bo Jio noticed it but didn't think much about it. Only when they boarded the car did the Almighty say, "To a university." Bo Jio arched a brow. A university? To meet the headmaster. Qin Imo supported his chin, his voice indescribably lazy. "You will fail if you don't attend classes for a long period of time." That was when Bo Jio remembered that the Almighty hadn't graduated, but the Almighty never attended classes. Besides, a university wouldn't bother him in this aspect. Hence, there was only one possibility. He was meeting the headmaster, but it had nothing to do with attending classes. He probably wanted to investigate something. Chapter 1041. A university was the capital university of Jiang City. It wasn't just the number of students. At this stage of the year, there were many tourists from all over the world. It had almost become a landmark in River Town. However, in such a school, no student would dye their hair completely silver. Basically, the moment Bo Jio entered the school, she became the center of attention. Coupled with that handsome face and Qin Imo who was standing beside her, it was hard to believe. It seemed to ignite the hearts of many young girls. She could even hear the whispers of the girls beside her. The news spread like wildfire. Very quickly, Bo Jio felt as though she and the Almighty were being watched like monkeys. As expected, there was a 70% chance that they wouldn't find anything when they entered a university without disguise. Fortunately, their luck was good. Just as Bo Jio was feeling thirsty, she found a vending machine and bent over to buy a bottle of water. Someone was talking to another person. What do you think they are investigating all day? It's so annoying. Who knows? Anyway, the people in the group said that even if they find something amiss, they won't do anything. It's really interesting. If someone dies somewhere else, they will say it was done by a university. What a joke. Isn't that right? Is there a need for such a small case? There are so many cases in the world. Why don't they care about it? Why are they so persistent? All right. Since you are the admin, you can just tell everyone and get them to do as you say. 2 days ago, someone mentioned that there was something wrong with my group and asked me to kick it out. Good job. It's troublesome to watch if you don't kick it. I saw what the person said. He is quite good at finding evidence. He said that you aren't a fan of Spade Z and that you shouldn't use Spade Z's name to attract fans. What's wrong with my group? Just a name. We didn't say anything about Spade Z. We just wanted to talk about the game. How is that attracting fans? Bo Jio straightened. She was still holding on to the can of cold drink. When she glanced up, she met their gaze. It was obvious that they had seen what Spade Z looked like. After the National League, Bo Jio's appearance was no longer a secret. Besides, it was hard not to notice that head of silver hair. The two people who were still discussing immediately quieted down. Bo Jio walked towards them and stopped. She said nonchalantly, "Then you should change the group name and information. Let's see how many people will join your group." That person's face alternated between red and white. In the end, he scoffed and said, "Esports players nowadays really make people uncomfortable. They're simply sick." Who said anything? They just want me to change the information. Bo Jio chuckled, tossing the can in her hand upwards. That person continued, "This kind of thing is something that one is willing to suffer and the other is willing to suffer. Who asked those fans who like you to join the group? I gave them a home to communicate with." Bo Jio lowered her gaze and remained silent. Just as that person was about to say something, there was a loud clang. An oncoming can slid past her cheek and smashed into the wall behind her. That kind of strength caused an echo. The girl froze, her face flushed red. The pain caused her expression to change instantly. She pointed at Bo Jio furiously. You. What did I do? Why are you pointing at me?" The youngster asked calmly. But his words. The girl clenched her fists, wanting to say something. Bo Jio tilted her head to send a WeChat message. "Brother Imo, there's something strange here. Do you want to come over and take a look?" "Ha." The girl laughed. "You're looking for Almighty Qin for such a small matter? You're really Almighty Qin." Bojio played with her phone. She glanced at the girl and smiled. I'm sure you aren't her. But even if you aren't, you should be the one being led. You're still useful. Once we follow the clues, we will be able to find out who the person with mediocre skills is. She's sick. The girl didn't understand what Bojio was talking about. She just felt that there was something wrong with her. When Chin Mo walked over with the headmaster and the plainclothes officer, the girl's expression changed. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. Using money to oppress others, how disgusting. Using money to pressure others, how disgusting. In her eyes, the two of them were like that. Chin Mo tilted his head slightly before he retracted his gaze and looked at her. What's so strange? Bojio opened her mouth, her words causing the headmaster's expression to change. The maiden's sacrifice will be restarted in a university. Little friend, you can't talk nonsense. No school director would want to hear this kind of news. Chin Mo's expression didn't change at all. Director, let her finish. Using the internet to attract some people to a private platform. There are many types of private platforms. They might seem ordinary, but in reality they are breeding grounds. Through communication, hints are usually planted in people's hearts unknowingly. People who follow the crowd are easily influenced. Besides, in China, there aren't many people who have faith and don't believe in karma. They have a weak sense of right and wrong. Regardless of whether it's their actions or words, they are based on their own perspective. They can't see the pain of others and build their happiness recklessly. Once someone guides them, they will become keyboard warriors who can force others to their death because they don't have to take responsibility for their sarcastic remarks. Bojio paused slightly before continuing. Director, logically speaking, a university student should have the most basic morals. Even if they notice something amiss, they shouldn't react. There are so many cases in the world, why don't they care about them? Why do they insist on targeting us? I didn't expect these words to come out of the mouths of the students of a university. Investigating the case was for protection, but in their eyes, it had been twisted into something else. They were using the group chat to influence others. How many students like her were there in a university? I should investigate further. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, perhaps the student could explain if there were any acquaintances beside her. The headmaster understood, but he didn't want to understand. As a senior, he smiled. Isn't that a little too scary? Bojio laughed lightly. Director, you can wait and see if you don't believe me. Before the headmaster could reply, the headmaster spoke. Chapter 1042. The girl couldn't see herself, just like how a selfish person wouldn't feel that they were selfish. The most disappointed person was probably the crime squad member who had been standing at the side. Most of the time. Perhaps that was the case. Even if they tried their best, it would still be misinterpreted. That was the greatest helplessness. Bojio didn't speak, her eyes darkening. The girl smirked and was about to say something when a cold voice came from beside her. Can I trouble Director Liu to inform the students' parents? The investigation will take some time. Also, we need to make a trip to the female dormitory. All right. The moment Chin Mo spoke, Director Liu realized the severity of the situation. After all, Chin Mo had been a specially enrolled student in a university. Back then, Chin Mo had been a specially enrolled student because he had achieved a certain level of attainment in criminal psychology. At that time, almost all the reputable universities had been fighting for him. There had even been professors from overseas who had personally contacted Chin Mo, inviting him to their school. But he had come from the Red Army courtyard, and the Qin family had always requested for him to stay in China after he came of age. Chin Mo had been determined to stay in China and protect his country. Hence, many professors from reputable universities had expressed their regrets. That was how a university had managed to recruit him, which meant that Chin Mo had sensed something was amiss. There was definitely a problem. But the girl didn't know that. Her face flushed red, looking extremely aggrieved. Why did you have to inform my parents? You think you can disregard other people's morals just because your family is rich? Chin Mo finally lifted his lids, his voice calm. Do you even have a personality? The girl froze. Chin Mo wasn't done. Getting into a university doesn't mean you're a good person. Cooperating with the investigation is the duty of every citizen. If you didn't learn it in primary school, you can read more junior high textbooks. Someone like you probably won't cooperate with the investigation. I'm informing your parents so that they can bail you out. If you don't need it, I won't force you. A reverse personality is indeed suitable to stay in the police station. The girl's eyes were filled with hatred, as though she wanted to drink someone's blood. Perhaps that was the case. It wasn't scary to make a mistake. It was the unwillingness to repent after making a mistake. That was why it was terrifying. The dean listened to the entire process from the side and couldn't help but be a little stunned. He really didn't think that there would be such a student in a university. It made him feel a chill on the back of his neck. It would be dark in a few hours. After the girl was taken away, the director couldn't understand why Chin Mo wanted to visit the dormitory. These days, the school's teachers had been checking the dormitory building regularly, and nothing abnormal had happened. Even the internet had been restricted. Why did he think of the dormitory building? The members of the Major Crimes Division were confused as well. Out of everyone, only Bojio knew what he was thinking. Judging from the girl's attitude, she still didn't know what she did wrong, so how could she cooperate with the investigation? The fastest way was no longer to interrogate, but to lock onto possible targets. Now that a university was so strict, it was inconvenient for the person who impersonated her to move around, so she simply found someone else to do what she wanted to do. Judging from the girl's behavior, she wasn't someone who stayed by her side for a long time, so she wouldn't be affected to this extent. Therefore, the fastest way was to start from the dormitory, which meant that the fake Z was most likely the girl's roommate. The female dormitory was much cleaner than the male dormitory. Especially in a capital city like a university, the facilities and conditions were superior. The corridors were clean and there weren't many people walking around. This was probably the difference between high school and university. But even so, when the two of them walked in, many girls shrieked in excitement. They couldn't help but scream. First, Chin Mo's face was always handsome and fairy-like no matter the time. Even when he walked, there seemed to be an aura around him, making it hard not to notice him. Also, Bojio rarely wore suits. Now he stuffed a hand into his pocket, his body tall and slender. His collar was half pulled, his silver hair falling down, and the slight smile on his face made him look like a prince. A girl with a face mask was about to knock on the door next door, but when she saw Chin Mo, she shrank back with a yelp. Then she jumped back, covering her face with both hands, feeling shy and surprised. Moreover, Big Spade was standing beside Almighty Chin. Gosh, how lucky was she to be able to see her two almighties today. No, that wasn't right. How stupid was she to have to wear a face mask like a man? At this moment, Bojio only had one thought. Indeed, she should have worn a face mask. Especially the Almighty, he was too lethal. If this continued, it would be easy to alert the enemy. There were people taking photos with their phones. The headmaster and the crime squad wanted to stop them. But it was inevitable that the photos would be leaked. In less than a minute, the topic became a hot topic. Esports Prince Charming accidentally enters female dormitory. Such a topic was bound to go viral. When someone clicked on it and saw the photos, the Weibo account was flooded with comments. Dearest, is there a clearer photo? Is there a photo of Almighty Chin's face? Big Spade and Almighty Chin entered the female dormitory together? Is it fake? After the appraisal, it might be real. That handsome silver short hair and the way he walks, it does resemble my Big Spade. I've never felt so blessed living in a university. The coordinates are the female dormitory, it means I'm looking at the two almighties. The popularity didn't seem to be decreasing. It was just like the screams coming from the dormitory corridor. Even the headmaster's authority couldn't suppress the commotion from the surrounding students. There was only one thought in his mind. It was difficult to move an inch with the two of them together. Outside the dormitory, many people started to run into the building, worried that they wouldn't be able to watch. Only one person, who was about to return to the dormitory with a book in his hand, paused at this moment. Seeing this scene, he pulled the person beside him and said, "Student, may I ask what's going on? Why are they all running towards the dormitory building? Don't you know? Supreme Alliance's two almighties are here, they're in our dormitory." The girl's face was flushed when she spoke, clearly agitated. The person who heard her froze, the fingertips of her other hand digging deep into her book. She was confused. Supreme Alliance's two almighties? Young Master Chin and Spade Z. The girl glanced towards the dormitory, her face filled with excitement. "I'm going in first." "All right." The person released her hand, turning over, her gaze flickering. Who else could it be other than Fanjia? The girl was puzzled. "Aren't you going back as well?" "I suddenly remembered that I forgot my dormitory key." Fanjia forced a smile, still a little stiff. "I have to go back to the classroom to get it?" "You can go back to get it after you've seen it, it's a rare opportunity." The girl was a warm-hearted person wanting to pull her in. There was a loud slap. Fanjia flung her hand away forcefully. The sound made the girl feel embarrassed. "Ah, sorry, me too. I'm not going, you can go. Fan Jia cut her off, not even bothering to give her a perfunctory smile, turning to leave. The girl didn't mind, all she wanted to do now was to see her almighty. Fan Jia, who had changed directions, felt a pressure she had never felt before. She hadn't expected that person to come so quickly. Moreover, he had traced her to the female dormitory. She didn't have anything on her, more importantly, her identification was still in the dormitory. Fan Jia wasn't sure how far the other party had gone. Did he already know who she was and was here to arrest her? In that instant, the darkness emanating from Fan Jia was extremely obvious. She walked forward, her expression already gloomy to a certain extent. The sudden turn of events had messed up her entire plan, leaving only annoyance. But this was the biggest difference between her and Bojio. It was the reality. Even at this stage, she would still be able to determine the crux of the problem and find the key to solving it. For example, if he really knew who she was, he wouldn't have entered the female dormitory, he would have ordered for her arrest. Fan Jia had always been confident that she understood Qin Mo the best. But in reality, someone who didn't even have the courage to fight Qin Mo wouldn't understand him the best. She had never been the one to fight Qin Mo fair and square. It was Z, the silver-haired youngster who dared to stand beside Qin Mo, her eyes filled with a devilish laziness. Brother Mo, as an almighty, you shouldn't go through a girl's things. Leave such immoral things to me. The headmaster was a little confused when he heard this. Aren't you a Prince Charming too? Qin Mo didn't bother about her, walking towards one of the beds. At this moment, the headmaster received the information on the 4 students in the dormitory and was about to place it in Qin Mo's hands. Qin Mo flipped open a book on the wooden table, his voice calm as he interrupted him. How many students with the surname Fan? The headmaster stilled, asking instinctively, how did you know there's a student with the surname Fan? Qin Mo flipped his hand, showing him the signature on the book. The headmaster wanted to say something. The youngster caressed his chin. I think she's called Fan Jia. The headmaster. He hadn't said anything. Were they here to get their fortune told? There's a signed receipt in the bin. Bojio stood up, showing the receipt in her hands. But there was something she didn't understand. Brother Mo, why didn't you ask anyone else? Why did you ask Fan Jia first? Qin Mo's fingers moved, pointing towards the books on the shelf. The books one likes to read can often reflect a person's personality and heart. Her table is overly clean and she is dressed like a young lady. But the books here have dark backgrounds, it doesn't match a young lady's feelings. Conflict means there's a problem. I see. Bojio smiled lazily. She had learned another trick from the Almighty. But the next second, Qin Mo spoke again. Qin Mo added, the others are basically normal, unlike a certain someone who reads the Super Pampered Little Wife Where Are You Going series. The youngster who was still flipping through the books almost slipped. How could he not mention her dark history? He continued nonchalantly, you don't seem to read those books anymore. How did you change your reading habits so easily? Bojio arched a brow, her instincts telling her that it was a trap. She replied casually, I've grown up, my mindset has definitely changed. Is that so? The word that represented uncertainty appeared again. This meant that the Almighty didn't believe her. Bojio was thinking about how she should reply if the Almighty continued to test her. After all, she couldn't afford to be exposed before she left the country. Otherwise she wouldn't be able to kidnap her. Fortunately, the Almighty only glanced at her once before returning his attention. He turned to the counselor beside him, his voice calm. What's the personality of the student named Fan Jia like? Did anything special happen? Nothing special happened and she has a cute personality. She gets along well with her roommates. This was the counselor's reply. It wasn't hard to hear the compliments in his tone. Fan Jia had left a good impression. Qin Mo flipped through the book in his hands. Who is Fan Jia's best friend? Best friend? The counselor took a moment to recall, a confused expression on his face. I don't think so, she doesn't like to participate in group activities. Bojio arched a brow. She got along well with her roommates but didn't have any close friends and didn't participate in group activities. That itself was strange. Qin Mo noticed it as well, asking, when did she start school? She started school early but because she wasn't feeling well, she only started classes half a year after school started. She seems like a rich girl. The counselor was still confused. She used to stay outside but would come back occasionally. What's wrong with an easygoing student? Bojio glanced down, grasping the crux of the problem. She used to stay outside? When was that? About a month ago, I can't remember the exact time but she has been staying in school ever since. I heard that her rent was due and it was more convenient for her to stay in school, so she came back. The counselor felt that it was a common occurrence. He couldn't understand why the investigation would lead to this dormitory, but it was too much of a coincidence for Bojio. About a month ago, she had locked onto the fake Z's neighborhood. Unconsciously, Bojio glanced in Chinmo's direction. Coincidentally, Chinmo was also looking at her. It was as though they were telepathic. She was almost certain. Chapter 1043. Usually, once they locked onto their target, they would take action immediately. But Chinmo and Bojio didn't move immediately. From the looks of it, the commotion in the dormitory building was huge. It wasn't possible for them to not notice. The commotion wasn't within their expectations. But since the situation was already like this, they could only use other methods to change the situation. They didn't say a word. Bojio grabbed onto the railing with one hand, taking a step forward. She exerted strength, bending her knees onto the top bunk. That instant, her movement was suave, the hem of her suit fluttering in midair. It was a cool sight. The headmaster was speechless. After all, everyone had stayed in a double bunk bed in school. Why did he have to struggle so much to climb it back then? Bojio checked the bed while Chinmo checked the study table. It was as though they had discussed it beforehand. There wasn't any room for the crime squad member. Until Bojio found a card bag, her lips lifting. Her identification card is here. Chinmo took it, glancing at the photo on the identification card before meeting the counselor's gaze. Are you sure this is Fanjia? Some people used fake identification cards. The counselor nodded. It's her, there's no mistake. The real photo? Bojio lifted the corners of her lips, breaking into a devilish smile. She probably used up all the fake identification cards and is only left with the real one. Bojio was right, Fanjia had used up all the fake identification cards and had been forced to use the real one. This was supposed to be the real one when she returned to the Golden Triangle, since there would be strict checks when entering and exiting the country. But Fanjia had never expected that the youngster she had been pretending to be and hated would be the Real Z. She had wanted to find a breakthrough point from this person to create a bigger whirlpool. However, he didn't expect that his identity would be exposed in this way. There was one more thing that she hadn't expected. Chinmo and Z would work together. Fanjia wasn't the only one who hadn't expected this. If Director Huang had heard it, he would have been shocked. After all, Chinmo wasn't the only one. No one knew that the youngster standing in front of him with the reckless smile was the idol of all the hackers in the world. Z. In the Fifth Avenue of America, no one could do anything to Z. At this moment, the young man's thin lips were slightly pursed as he continued to search for something. As long as Chinmo lifted his eyes, he could see the youngster's expression. The light in his eyes dimmed. Then he reached out and carried her by the waist. Bojio stilled. She felt as though the Almighty was hugging a naughty child. The school dean watched from the side and widened his eyes. What are these two people doing? The member of the Key Case Investigation Unit knew the importance of an ID card. He picked up the walkie-talkie and was about to report the progress. Unexpectedly, the next second, Chinmo stopped him. I will contact Director Huang directly, wait for his instructions. Of course, the member would listen to Chinmo, but they had to report to their superior. Young Master Chin this. Chinmo didn't say much. He whipped out his phone and called Director Huang. Minion was irritated. How many hours has it been? Why did you call only now? The higher-ups have ordered the Major Crimes Division to solve the case in the next few days, or they'll hold me accountable. Chinmo placed the phone further away from his ear, tilting his head casually. He waited for Minion to finish yelling before pulling the phone closer. His voice was calm, carrying his usual elegance. The fake Z has been found. The 5 words were like a stimulant, perking Minion up instantly. He straightened his back. Oh, where is he? I'll head over now. It's fine. Chinmo twirled the ID card in his hands, asking slowly, who is with you now? Minion started to panic. I'm at work, who else could it be? Hurry up and tell me, don't delay the arrest. No way. His deep and magnetic voice caused Minion to pause. No way? What? Minion frowned deeply. It was such an important matter, wouldn't it be a waste of time if he didn't act quickly? Chinmo glanced at the youngster. The intelligent Bojio pushed the 3 of them out of the room and locked the wooden door. Her movements were smooth, but the headmaster and the dormitory management who were standing outside the dormitory were confused. What was going on? Chinmo watched as the youngster leaned against the door, smiling at him. He reached out casually, pointing at her, hinting that she should head out too. Bo Jio stood firm, her expression serious. I'll guard the door. Chin Mo arched a brow, seeming to have thought of something. He lifted the edge of his lips, turning to continue talking on his phone. Have you forgotten that the other party has spies inside? Director Huang, also known as Director Huang, came to a realization. You're worried that the news will be leaked and the other party will escape in advance. But how are we going to act if we don't inform our subordinates? If there are spies inside, everything will be meaningless. You should understand this logic. Chin Mo's voice didn't change even though he had noticed that the youngster had been looking in his direction while he was on the phone. That clear gaze was sometimes so calm that it was hard to doubt him. If it hadn't been for Xiao Zhao's reminder, he wouldn't have thought about it until now. Chin Mo averted his gaze, listening to the voice on the other end. Director Huang paced back and forth. What should we do? Don't we act? No. Chin Mo's eyes lit up. Rather than being passive, why don't we set a trap for them to fall into? With that, he twirled the ID card in his hands. Bo Jio's gaze landed on the ID card. In that instant, she understood Chin Mo's plan. Sun Tzu's art of war, catching a turtle in a jar. If they were lucky, they would be able to catch two of them. As expected, Chin Mo continued, the subordinates can't tell, but you can tell the higher-ups. Based on what I know, any major case would require a meeting between the four leaders to come up with a common answer. You can hold a secret meeting now and invite the four of them over. Tell them that the suspect, Fan Jia, the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice, has an important item in the hands of the crime squad. With it, it would be difficult for Fan Jia to leave the country. Through this item, we will be able to confirm her identity through the surveillance footage. However, with the enemy spies, it isn't a good idea to alert them. We are worried that someone might leak the information or take the item, hence, we are using the highest level of secrecy. Ask the four of them to keep it a secret. Tell them the address. Director Huang's fingers froze in disbelief. Are you trying to use this method to test the four of them? You suspect that the spy is among them? Is that possible? Whether it's possible or not, we'll know after we try. Chin Mo's voice didn't change at all, his indifferent tone as though he was discussing the weather today. If the higher-ups don't make any mistakes, it will be easier for the people below to work. Chin Mo's casual words made Director Huang feel conflicted. He would only occasionally think that there was a problem with the higher-ups. But this idea was too sensational, so he didn't think too deeply about it. But Chin Mo's words were reminding him that he had to investigate the source of this matter. Got it? I'll inform those four to come to the key case investigation unit now. After hanging up the phone, Director Huang did not waste any time and immediately called the four of them. The higher-ups had been paying close attention to the maiden's sacrifice case. The four of them, including Huang Guohua, were mainly keeping an eye on this side. Therefore, as soon as he heard that the main culprit was confirmed, even those who were usually very busy stopped what they were doing and rushed to the conference hall. At that time, Director Huang was sitting on a leather office chair, holding the phone with a serious expression on his face. The four of them arrived at the conference hall one after another. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say that you have a suspect? Why haven't you informed us?" Director Huang glanced at him before replying, basically following Chin Mo's instructions. If that's the case, we have to keep it a secret. Another person moved forward. If we don't inform our subordinates, we won't alert them. Before we know what the problem is, it's best to keep a low profile. No, I don't think so. The old officer had a different opinion. Since we have a target, we should act quickly. It's good to keep a low profile, but we might miss the best time to arrest them. I'm just voicing my opinion. Secretary Zhang, you can reconsider if you don't agree. But this matter is still under the jurisdiction of the crime squad, so Director Huang should be the one to make the decision. After all, everyone has their own specialties. Compared to the old officer, Secretary Zhang, Director Wang, who was originally from the Criminal Investigation Unit, was basically on Director Huang's side. Little Huang wasn't asking for their approval, it was just a notification. After the notification, Director Huang kept the things in his hands. It's decided. I will get someone to protect the items the suspect left behind. At the very least, we have to control her movements so she can't leave the country. Due to the severity of the matter, I will have to ask the four of you to keep this a secret. This time, we have specially selected a special unit from the military. No one will know what they are up to and there won't be any leaks. We already have the suspect's portrait, and as long as we have the identification, we will be able to arrest Fan Jia soon. As for her identification, it will be sent to the forensics department for analysis. We'll be safe. These words signified the end of the meeting. Director Huang sent everyone out personally. When he was the only one left in the conference room, he took out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "We have followed your instructions. What about now? What are we doing?" Qin Imo replied calmly, "Waiting? Just waiting?" Director Huang couldn't figure out his intentions. "Where are you now?" "Downstairs." By downstairs, Qin Imo was referring to the crime squad. He glanced over at the silver-haired youngster who was biting on a lollipop. His hands moved so quickly that it left one speechless. He lifted his thin lips, looking like a naughty prince. "I'm also admiring someone's skills." "Someone?" Director Huang paused before realizing who he was referring to. "How can you be so lovey-dovey at a time like this?" "Qin Imo, everyone knows you are smart, but the four of them are all smart. Even if there is a spy among them, even if you tell them the location of the identification, they might not send anyone to retrieve it. They are more skilled than anyone else in terms of self-protection. Once the bait is set, no fish will take the bait. They might make use of the time difference to help the main culprit escape. By then we will be left with nothing." "That won't happen," Qin Imo replied to Director Huang's uneasiness. He met the youngster's gaze and arched a brow. "Are you done?" Bo Jio bit on the lollipop, stuffing one hand into her pocket. She gave Qin Imo a cool, okay sign, a devilish smile on her face. What's the big deal about giving someone else a listening device? Moreover, the four of them seemed to be in a hurry. It was a little difficult to get around the bodyguards in black, especially when they bumped into someone. The bodyguards had to snipe them with their sniper eyes. Fortunately, she had changed her clothes and was now wearing the uniform of the Key Case Investigation Unit, so no one would suspect what she had done. Qin Imo lifted his thin lips, taking out the Bluetooth earpiece. He grabbed the youngster's wrist and pulled her into the Land Rover parked by the roadside. He didn't bother looking at the gazes around him. He let Director Huang ask on the other side of the phone, "Why not?" Qin Imo replied, "Wait a minute." Director Huang didn't know what to say. Who was the real chief here? It was every successful person's basic charity to always carry a business notebook with them. After Qin Imo boarded the car, he placed the notebook in the youngster's hands, his voice unchanged. "You should know how to locate it." "Of course." Bo Jio's eyes lit up when she saw the notebook. The Almighty's gaze had been deep for the past 2 days. He seemed to know something, but at the same time he didn't. In order to avoid giving herself away, she hadn't touched any electronic products for the past 2 days. It was a little frustrating. Chapter 1044. Kata. The rhythmic tapping of the keyboard reverberated in the car. Only a pair of hands could be seen descending rapidly. The phone was connected to the hotspot and through the Bluetooth earpiece, he entered the program page. When the chat box popped up, the strings of code seemed to transform into countless lines, the lights connecting and invading. Director Huang finally realized something was amiss, his frown deepening as he asked Qin Imo through the phone, "What's that sound on your end?" "Laptop." Qin Mo's voice was calm, his bandaged hand slung casually to the side. The 3 words confused Director Huang even more. "Laptop?" Director Huang's eyes lit up. "You brought Fatty?" Qin Imo paused, taking a moment before replying, "MH." Director Huang couldn't understand the situation over the phone. Qin Mo raised his hand, tapping on the screen that the youngster was working on. His voice didn't change. "Sync the recording to Director Huang's phone." "All right." Bo Jio smiled devilishly. Director Huang was still confused. "What recording?" "It's coming," she replied, her fingers pressing the spacebar. Once the target was locked, the map opened up. There were 4 red dots scattered in different directions. It had been less than a minute since the 4 of them had left. "That's not right, what's coming?" "Qin Imo, who exactly is sitting beside you?" Director Huang's frustration was beyond description. Qin Imo didn't reply, instead he zoomed in on the map calmly and switched on his Bluetooth earpiece. "Are they there?" "Boss, car number 1 is ready." It was Magician's voice. He always wore sunglasses and drove a black sports car. Being flashy was a form of disguise. "Car number 2 is ready." It was the Special Forces soldier's voice. After confirming the location, Bo Jio glanced over, arching a brow. When did the Almighty set this up? Since there was car number 1 and 2, there would definitely be cars 3 and 4, which meant that all 4 of them had been following the same car. 1 minute and 20 seconds. That meant that the 4 cars hadn't gone far. At this moment, any traitor would be in a dilemma. Therefore, whoever called first would be the most suspicious. However, just like what King Huang had said, at the very least, these people wouldn't be as impulsive as some people. Not a single red dot flashed on the screen. Everyone was waiting. A pure black sports car flashed past his eyes. At this time, Director Huang had also realized something. You sent someone to follow these 4 people? Chinemo replied, giving off a nonchalant vibe from start to finish. But she knew that the Almighty's nonchalance was scarier than anyone else. When was this trap set up? He chose to activate it at this time. It wasn't just the other party, even Director Huang was dumbfounded. As expected, Ambassador Huang stood up again. Where did you find these people? I'm telling you, don't give me any trouble. This is a crucial time. If you offend those 4, they'll report you to the higher-ups and you'll be banned again. Afraid of him? Just these 2 words. He was very calm. In the middle, Qin Imo didn't forget to reach out, pushing the youngster's fringe aside. Bojio glanced at the screen, thinking to herself, I'm impressed by the Almighty. He's the only one with such arrogance. Brother Imo, society, he's ruthless and rich. Wait a minute. It's here. Bojio moved her fingers, her dark eyes glinting. This time it was really here. She magnified the red dot that was emitting the signal. At the same time, a cold glint flashed past Chinmo's eyes. It was a signal that a call had been made or received. But usually, after such a secret meeting, there wouldn't be any calls. Unless it was a business matter. In other words, whoever's phone had a response at this time was definitely a problem. Bojio reached out, magnifying her voice. Hello. Someone had made a call. If that was the case, the other party was even more suspicious. The call was synchronized with Director Huang's voice. Hence, when he heard the word, hello, Director Huang was the most nervous. He didn't want anything to happen to the higher-ups. Don't talk to me about the past, this is the present. What's the content of the meeting? How did you know we had a meeting today? Director Huang's throat went dry. I don't care where you got the information from, I can tell you that the content of the meeting has nothing to do with what you received. Don't call me again. Also, as a grassroots member, do your job properly. Don't always think of using this kind of method to find out information. Why are the things you learned in school useless? If there are such secret meetings in the future and someone gives you information, just pretend that you didn't hear it. It's so chaotic now and you're still rushing to get involved. Are you trying to throw away the hat on your head? Speaking up to this point, the secretary rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Who told you about this? It's that person from the criminal investigation department. I thought the higher-ups had found out about me. Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted. Wang Chuanlei? How could he tell you about such an important meeting? That's ridiculous. Director Huang spoke up. The 2 of them have nothing to do with the case, it can only be considered a leak. It seems like the 4 of them aren't the traitors. That might not be the case. Wait a minute. These 2 sentences came out almost at the same time. It was Qin Imo and Bojio. Both of them paused before replying in unison. We have to investigate Wang Chuanlei. Wang Chuanlei? Director Huang broke into laughter. Stop joking, even during the meeting he agreed with me not to inform the higher-ups. This is the only way to catch the traitor. How could there be a problem with such a person? Qin Mo's voice was calm, but it hit the nail on the head. Since he is so focused on finding the traitor, why did he leak the news of such an important meeting before it started? Director Huang choked. He couldn't answer the question. When there's a conflict between actions and words, it means there's something fishy going on. Qin Mo supported his chin, the sunlight streaming through the car window onto his handsome face. This is basic criminology. Besides, to be able to hide for such a long time without being discovered, this person isn't a linear thinker. Under normal circumstances, such people are highly vigilant. If they don't have a certain level of anti-detection ability, they wouldn't reveal the key points to the criminal during every operation. Such a person would definitely be meticulous and wouldn't easily give themselves away. After so many days, he should have noticed the crime squad's internal investigation. That's why he found someone to distract them before the meeting. This person wouldn't just be a distraction, he could also be used as a shield if there really was a leak. As for why he agreed with you not informing the higher-ups, it's because once the higher-ups are mobilized, the possibility of the criminal escaping would decrease. Making use of the time difference to escape is a professional method. Director Huang. Why did he feel as though he was being mocked for his intelligence? Bojio chewed on a lollipop. As for why she had the same thoughts as the Almighty, it was because she had always done things in the same manner, creating a diversion to divert attention. There were many suspicious points about Wang Chuanlei. If not, How was she going to explain the call he had made before entering the meeting? The most interesting thing was, Bojio smiled, enlarging the screen. Wang Chuanlei's phone is transmitting information as well. Any kind of information was transmitted through the internet. It was the same regardless of whether it was Unicom or Telecom. Right now, Bojio was intercepting this kind of information. There was information being transmitted, but there wasn't any sound coming from the phone. It was impossible that there wasn't a listening device. There was only one possibility left. He's sending a text message. The moment she finished her sentence, Qin Imo pressed down on his Bluetooth earpiece. Qin Imo pressed his Bluetooth earpiece. Number 1, focus on tracking. Yes. In that instant, all the cars that had been on the 4 routes converged onto a single road. If a drone were to capture the scene, it would look like a movie about a case being solved. Wang Chuanlei, who was in the car, wasn't aware of all this. He avoided the driver in front, his fingers still texting. Regardless of what method you use, head to the border as soon as possible. I'll get someone to settle the documents for you. The crime squad is already doing a face check. Don't go to the airport, subway or high-speed rail. This time, I don't care what you think or how capable you are, you have to listen to me. At this moment, Wang Chuanlei felt as though he was on a roller coaster. He had never expected that even Fan Jia would be exposed. When he had heard Fan Jia's name in the meeting room, his heart had been shaken. What exactly had happened? How had the crime squad found her location so quickly? Even though they had locked onto a university was huge. However, a university was so big. How could it be possible to find a person in just a few days? Besides, Fan Jia had always been intelligent. Wang Chuanlei tried his best to control his expression, afraid that Cishir would notice something. But even so, he couldn't hide his guilty conscience. The sweat on his forehead had been dripping down ever since he had boarded the car. Fortunately, before the meeting he had given someone a call. This meant that even if the arrest wasn't successful and the news was leaked, it wouldn't be from him. Wang Chuanlei took a deep breath and loosened his tie. Nothing would go wrong as long as he considered everything. Chapter 1045. Fan Jia cursed under her breath when she received the message. She had never experienced something like this before. She was like a street rat, only able to do things in the dark. Her original plan had been perfect, but from today onwards, everything seemed to have collapsed. Until now, Fan Jia still didn't know what exactly went wrong. Now it was too late to think about it. She had to think of a way to leave the country. Once she reached the Golden Triangle, she would make a comeback. Got it? Fan Jia shot back viciously. Even after replying, she still felt indignant. She couldn't leave just like that. Even if she left, she had to make sure the youngster around Qin Imo would never be able to recover. Fan Jia's eyes dimmed. She glanced at the busy traffic, whipped out her phone, and dialed a number. The person on the other end of the line wasn't anyone else. It was Fu Ximing, who had lost all his shares. At this moment, Fu Ximing had changed completely. The Fu family had other houses. However, this house was indeed owned by Fu Ximing. It was ironic. This house was originally a birthday gift from Fu Zhongyi to Fu Ximing. Now, no matter how Fu Zhongyi shouted outside, Fu Ximing didn't seem to have any intention of opening the door. After all, he had already seen through it. This old thing was useless, he might even become a burden in the future. It was better to chase him away now. At the end of the day, it was all that trash's fault. Fu Ximing threw the wine bottle in his hand heavily. The ringtone of his phone startled him for a moment, but he quickly smiled. Ever since he lost his power, there weren't many people who called him. Fu Ximing let out a drunken burp and pressed the call button. Do you want to destroy your brother? It was a girl's voice. Fu Ximing frowned. Who are you? Who I am isn't important, what's important is the question I asked you just now. Of course, Fu Ximing wanted to take revenge. He wanted to trample on the trash who had humiliated him. Make a trip to the prison and try to find your mother. From what I know, your mother has a secret that can destroy that person. The secret seems to be related to your brother. It has to be said by your father for it to be believable. I'm not sure what the secret is. I wanted to do it myself, but now that I'm leaving the country, I can't destroy that person with my own hands. It's up to you whether you want to continue. After finishing this sentence, Fan Jia hung up the phone. She had to find a way to sneak in as soon as possible. Fu Ximing seemed to have woken up from his drunken stupor. He was stunned for a while. Without any hesitation, he strode toward the door. He really didn't expect that old thing to still have some use. After Fu Ximing opened the door, he immediately changed his expression and looked at Fu Zhongyi, who was about to have a heat stroke. Dad, I was in a bad mood just now. Coming quickly, I'm sorry. He didn't know if it was because he had been through too much. Fu Zhongyi yearned for this bit of warmth. Besides, he needed a place to stay. He sighed. Dad doesn't blame you, it's all that ungrateful son's fault. Chapter 1046. What is it? As long as he could destroy that unfilial son, Fu Zhongyi was willing to do anything. The person Fu Zhongyi hated the most right now was this little brat who had stolen everything from his hands. Fu Ximing lowered his voice. I just received a call. The other party said that as long as you can get in touch with my mom and get you to reveal a secret, Big Brother's life will be over. Fu Zhongyi tightened his sweaty shirt, seemingly coming to a decision. I still have a card, think of a way to send it in and meet your mom. Okay. Fu Ximing agreed, but inside he was sneering. This old man was really cautious. If it hadn't been for this, he wouldn't have known that he had another card. The father and son were separated by their bellies, but they appeared calm. Fu Ximing even prepared a hot shower for Fu Zhongyi so that he could have a good rest before looking for his mom. He wasn't thinking the same way anymore. Fu Ximing knew that if there was a way to get rid of that trash, by then Fu Zhongyi would still be the one in power. Hence he had to suck up to the old man first. Time trickled by. On the other side, Wang Chuanlei heaved a sigh of relief when he received Fan Jia's message. He knew very well that the Key Case Investigation Unit had already started an internal investigation. In fact, no one was safe. Even he was probably under suspicion. Especially after the meeting, he could feel the tension in the situation. Perhaps it was time for him to stop. Wang Chuanlei leaned back. He had to find a chance to leave the country. He couldn't stay in the country any longer. Fortunately, he was smart enough. The crime squad had been like this all these years. And that young Master Qin was a criminal psychologist. Once Smith arrived, he wouldn't have the right to speak. Wang Chuanlei's fingers moved again. Next, as long as he arranged for the inspection side, this matter would be done without anyone knowing. Just like how he had dealt with Rao back then. However, he hadn't expected something to happen. Out of nowhere, a car drifted beautifully, stopping in the middle of the road with a loud roar. Wang Chuanlei felt the car brake. Before he could delete the message, his head hit the back of the chair in front of him. What's going on? Wang Chuanlei's first reaction was to yell at the driver. The driver's entire body was pressed against the steering wheel. His face was pale as he looked at the 4 sports cars in front of him. His voice was trembling. Front, what's in front? Wang Chuanlei sat up straight and looked ahead. 4 men dressed in camouflage uniforms stood in front of him. Each of them had different looks, but they were full of masculinity. All the cars stopped at this moment. One of them carried a sniper rifle on his shoulder. In the country, people who were not part of the special forces were not allowed to carry guns. In other words, they were from the special forces. In that instant, Wang Chuanlei felt an unprecedented sense of panic. He grabbed the leather seat, his whole body a little stiff. Wait a minute. Don't scare yourself. Maybe it was just the special forces that needed his cooperation. Chapter 1047. But the next second, Wang Chuanlei's thoughts were crushed. Because right behind his car, there was another car coming towards him. It was much more inconspicuous than the sports car. But it didn't affect the huge boulder it threw. The person who stepped out of the car was none other than Qin Mo. His hand was still wrapped in a white bandage and he stood tall and straight like a jade. Behind him were 4 sports cars. The camouflage uniform didn't match his suit. But this problem didn't seem to exist in front of Qin Mo. Under the halo, he had pitch-black hair, a straight back and a pair of deep, expressionless eyes. Every single point was telling the truth. He was a soldier of China. Are you coming out yourself or do I have to cuff you? That was Qin Mo's first sentence. Bo Jio supported her face with one hand as she sat in the Land Rover. Suddenly she broke into a devilish laugh. The Almighty's words were direct and clean. Unfortunately, the captured person didn't seem to have given up. Do you think you can slander whoever you want just because of the Qin family's power? Cuff me? Qin Mo, you have to have evidence to catch someone. I'm staying quiet here and you're rushing out and causing such a huge commotion. Have you thought about the consequences? Wang Chuanlei knew he couldn't go out. If he did, he would definitely be photographed. This was the internet era. If he caused a commotion, his career would be over. But how could Qin Mo allow him to hide like a tortoise? He immediately kicked the car. With his agile movements, the kick landed on the car with a loud clang. It was extremely ruthless. Wang Chuanlei shivered. If she had been in the car, she would have felt uneasy as well. But the Almighty's kick, wasn't this strong in the past? Had he not used his full strength when he fought with her? It seemed like she had to re-evaluate the Almighty's strength. That way there wouldn't be any accidents during the kidnapping. Whether it was the people sitting on the bus or the people driving over, they all stuck their heads out at this time. Almost everyone stretched their necks and took pictures. After all, the scene was like a blockbuster movie and no one knew what was going on. However, the sudden appearance of 4 Special Forces soldiers in camouflage uniforms was a rare sight. It was so cool that people thought they were in a movie. Chinamo leaned over and placed his uninjured hand on the front of the car. He tilted his body slightly and looked at the driver in the driver's seat. He said domineeringly, "If he doesn't come down, you won't come down either?" By now, the driver had already understood what had happened. Something must have happened to the person he was following. He was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He glanced at the rearview mirror. Wang Chuanlei's face was tense. "Sit down. Wait for someone to come." Waiting for someone to come? Chinamo lifted his bandaged left hand. There was a swoosh sound. The sniper standing behind him raised his gun and aimed it at the car. Chinamo glanced at the driver, his voice calm. "I'll ask you one last time. If he doesn't come down, are you not coming down either?" I'll go. The driver was so scared that even his voice was trembling. He opened the door with trembling hands, but his speed was astonishing. He had never seen such an unyielding method before. Chapter 1048. The door was open, which meant that he was no longer protected. But Wang Chuanlei believed that it wasn't the worst-case scenario. He sat there motionlessly. "I'll say it once more, I won't go out. Shoot if you dare." Wang Chuanlei refused to believe that Chinamo would be so arrogant as to open fire in public. He was a man of status. Even if he was to be punished, it would be by the higher-ups. Chinamo didn't have the right to punish him. "You blocked my car and pointed a gun at my driver. If you don't give me an explanation, Chinamo, even if you are General Qin's son, I will not give in. I know you dare to do this because my position isn't as high as the Qin family, but your actions have crossed the line. You can open fire, I won't stop you, but I didn't do anything wrong. Are you going to the military court for your reckless actions?" Wang Chuanlei's words were shameless. But usually the wrongdoer would pretend to be innocent. That was human nature. It was obvious that the people around him were starting to believe his words. After all, under normal circumstances, when the stronger side mobilized a large number of people, it would be seen as bullying the weaker side. But now the weaker party was in the right, but it wasn't the root of the problem. A wrong was a wrong, it didn't matter who was stronger. And justice could only be obtained when you were strong. Chinamo wasn't one to back down. He pulled the car door open, his voice nonchalant. "If you don't want me to go to the military court, why aren't you getting out?" His words put Wang Chuanlei in a dilemma. Bojio whistled. The Almighty was so handsome, she wanted to kidnap him and bring him home. Wang Chuanlei's face turned black and red. He was the one who was indignant and the one who didn't dare to get out of the car. Chinamo smiled slowly, but his eyes were cold, without a trace of warmth. "You're right about one thing. I won't shoot because people like you will dirty it. Get out of the car, don't pretend to be a coward." Coward, coward, coward. Even though the scene was serious, Magician resisted the urge to laugh. His boss had such a sharp tongue. It was hard to describe with just a few words. Wang Chuanlei wanted to resist. Chinamo reached out and grabbed his phone, tossing it to the youngster who was smiling at him from the car. When she saw the phone, she smiled devilishly. She slid her fingers over it and unlocked it before tossing it back to him. The two of them seemed to be like this. When it came to cooperation, they didn't need to say a word to know what the other was thinking. The onlookers couldn't see what Bojio looked like, they could only see her fair hand reaching out. They could roughly guess that there was a person inside, but they couldn't see his exact appearance or age. Chinamo had been standing there the entire time, as though he was protecting the youngster. No one could see who was sitting in the car. The moment his phone was taken away, Wang Chuanlei's heart began to sink. Chinamo had one hand in his pocket, swiping the phone screen open and opening the message. He turned the phone so that Wang Chuanlei could see the page himself. "You shouldn't be sitting here, you should be acting. Chief Wang sure learned the White Lotus trick well. You want to cry out your grievances only after you go to jail." At this moment, Wang Chuanlei did not say anything else, because his whole body was paralyzed on the ground. But he couldn't understand. How did he know such content was on his phone? It was as though he had opened his third eye. Who exactly was it? Who was the one behind all this? Was it the person in the car? Wang Chuanlei wanted to take a look. Chapter 1049. Province, Military Region. General. Adjutant Zhang hurriedly walked in from the outside and unlocked his phone. It was a picture that had been secretly taken. Although it wasn't very clear, he could tell who the person in the picture was from the figure. General Qin looked at the photo, frowning. When did they arrive in Jiang City? No one reported. They should be looking for young master. Deputy Zhang stood at the side. After all, they only listened to young master. General Qin pinched his brows. Has this been reported? It has been reported. They said that they were cooperating with the crime squad. Young master's actions were within the scope, but his attitude was a little over the top. Deputy Zhang hid something when he said those words. General Qin placed the things in his hands down. It wasn't a little over the top, right? Deputy Zhang stuttered. Yes, the camouflage uniform was too eye-catching. But young master has always been like that. If he didn't do that, that person wouldn't have been able to take him down. General Qin glanced up, his military uniform ramrod straight. He can't wear the uniform yet. As a criminal psychologist, he did the right thing, Deputy Zhang continued. General Qin pulled open the drawer next to him. Inside was a golden tassel embedded on his shoulder. He had personally plucked it from his son. General. Deputy Zhang wanted to say something but stopped. General Qin paused. Submit the application, it's time for him to come back. But will young master accept it? Deputy Zhang didn't ask this question for no reason. That year, when he returned from a mission, someone suspected that young master had been hypnotized, saying that he had shot an innocent person. Hence, he was stripped of his military rank. He couldn't forget the young master back then. He was bathed in blood and didn't know what he had been through. His wrist was injured, but that wasn't a big deal. What was unforgettable was that he had never seen his young master cry. But at that time he knew that there were tears in his eyes. No one knew what had happened. Yet, at that time, someone had to question him. The mission was completed by young master alone. But when he returned, he was met with doubt. Since things had already turned out like this, would the young master still accept it? General Qin lifted his head. He will. Adjutant Zhang opened his mouth. Even if he doesn't wear a military uniform, he is still a soldier. General Qin raised his hand and signed the document. Who taught him to give up after being questioned? Adjutant Zhang did not say anything, because he knew very well that the bureau chief was right. Young master, even when he was questioned back then and his wrist was bleeding, he still wanted to destroy the main computer at that time and rescue the hostages who had not been brainwashed. This was what a soldier was like. It was probably because of this. It was a border mission. Only the young master would be the most suitable person to go. At the same time, Adjutant Zhang also knew that most of those missions were filled with death. He did not dare to tell Madame about this. Fortunately, he didn't have to go immediately. Adjutant Zhang brought up the map again. I'll go and deal with it. This time, I hope that young master can catch the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice and cut off their escape route. That way, it'll be easier to carry out the next border mission. The maiden's sacrifice was never as simple as it seemed. Hidden beneath it was an armed force that started from human nature, distorted values, and restrained wealth. This was something they had only recently discovered. This tumor had to be removed. The wind outside was getting stronger. 4 sports cars gathered, following behind a pure black Land Rover. One of the cars drove forward. He lowered the window, a black Bluetooth earpiece on his ear. Boss, where are we going next? To find someone. Qin Mo unlocked the phone he had taken from Wang Chuanlei, his voice calm. We won't be bringing Commissioner Wang 100 meters ahead. Hand him over to the crime squad. Got it? Magician smiled, speeding up to overtake the car. Halfway through he slowed down. He seemed to have realized something, glancing at the silver-haired youngster in the car. Boss, why does he look so familiar? Bo Jio had seen Magician before at the cinema when she was still an employee. Qin Mo glanced up, sweeping Magician a glance. You got the wrong person, send him over. Got the wrong person? Magician was still frowning, but in the next second he came to a realization. Was this the one that had turned his boss gay? He wanted to stop and watch, but his boss gave an order. Magician stepped on the accelerator with a regretful expression. When the car sped past, Wang Chuanlei finally had a chance to look at the person inside. He had thought about the person who had ruined their plans countless times. How would he look like? But he had never expected to see such a face. The youngster was unbelievably handsome, his silver hair blown away, revealing his eyes and the pair of hands on the keyboard. They were slender and fair, a little weak. However, it was precisely this pair of hands that stirred the winds and clouds and reversed the universe. Because at that moment, the youngster's hands landed swiftly, the crisp sound of the keyboard hitting the keyboard. Even though it was just for a moment, Wang Chuanlei understood. Qin Mo had an expert that could defeat Fan Jia by his side. None of them had noticed. Even Fan Jia hadn't known it was this person. He was a chess piece in their plan, the useless young master of the Fu family who only knew how to play games. The car sped past. 4 sports cars roared past one after another, forming a straight line. The chase hadn't stopped. After Qin Mo unlocked his phone, he glanced at the youngster beside him. Bo Jio adjusted the page, activating the signal tracking. Now, as long as the call went through, she would be able to locate Fan Jia. Their chemistry was as good as ever. Qin Mo lifted his thin lips, dialing the number. On the other side, Fan Jia glanced at the caller ID about to pick up. Just then, a piece of news appeared on the screen. She recognized the car in the picture. Fan Jia narrowed her eyes, glancing at the caller ID on the screen. Her hand, which was about to press the button, suddenly stopped. After the ringtone disappeared, she hurriedly opened the preview, entering a certain page. There was a group of people discussing many things. Some said that the discussions here were wrong, that it was defamatory, and that they shouldn't come. Some people were quibbling, saying that they were just here to chat. There were also people who were pointing fingers and telling the people who were here to ignore those comments. In any case, they were all here to defame them. Those who argued were still talking about the arrest of one of their members and felt that they weren't in the wrong. Most of the people who argued were from the previous case, those who didn't believe that the plagiarist had plagiarized. When Fan Jia had recruited these people, she had known that they wouldn't be able to differentiate and would definitely become her seeds. Now the seeds had bloomed. Perhaps these people could help her. After all, she had no idea what had happened on the other end of the call. Fan Jia started to ask around. Someone replied immediately, "You must have been targeted. I saw someone arresting someone today. These people must have nothing better to do, always doing such things. I heard that the person who stopped them is quite powerful." Fan Jia's heart sank. Her first reaction was to remove the SIM card. As someone who could handle matters so smoothly, Fan Jia wasn't stupid. After hearing the person's words, she quickly understood that Wang Chuanlei had been arrested. There was something wrong with the call just now. Fan Jia gritted her teeth as though she had thought of something. She first complained about her grievance, then added, "Can anyone help me?" These people were interesting. They were suspicious of the matter. They were compassionate towards the matter that wasn't right since they were helping a person get off the hook. One of them agreed, asking for Fan Jia's whereabouts. He said that she was close to Fan Jia and that they could go over to meet her. He encouraged her to work hard and that they were all on her side. On the other side, when the call went dead, Qin Mo knew that the other party must have sensed something. He immediately changed the direction of the investigation and dialed Director Huang's number. Just in case, expand the scope. She won't choose the railway or plane as she won't be able to pass the security check. However, it's different for the other vehicles. Everyone is concentrated on the roads. Finding a needle in a haystack. She had to find a needle. Bo Jio suggested. I think she will start from the internet. Qin Mo glanced up, a glint in his eyes. Bo Jio's fingers flew across the keyboard. Breaking through wasn't a problem. But there were too many of them and it would take a long time to find traces. In the end, Bo Jio's fingers paused. There should be information about the student in a university. I need to know her account and password to see her preview records. The crime squad would definitely have such basic information. Qin Mo understood what the youngster was trying to do. He turned over, tapping on the keyboard with one hand. Even though his other hand was wrapped in a white bandage, it didn't seem to affect his typing speed. She logged in with the account and password. There were 5 long-term traces on the screen. Bo Jio did a data analysis on each trace, forming a preview page, but she wasn't sure which one it was. Qin Mo scanned the screen inch by inch, finally landing on a message. Click on this one and take a look. Bo Jio moved her fingers, realizing there was more hidden information. She tilted her head, deciding to learn from him. How did you find out? Good intuition from physics, something you don't have. Qin Mo's face was still handsome. But Bo Jio had an inexplicable urge to bite the Almighty. What kind of intuition was that? But sometimes, intuition came from years of experience. The two of them swiped the screen, quickly noticing a strange message. That was because that ID was intentionally or unintentionally asking about today's pursuit, and he even asked someone out. Bo Jio arched a brow. There's a problem. Qin Imo didn't reply. Instead, he dialed Director Huang's number. The culprit might be moving with a hostage. Be prepared. Hostage? Director Huang bolted up. Why would there be a hostage? Once there was a hostage, the nature of the arrest would change. No matter what, they had to ensure the safety of the hostage. Qin Imo glanced out of the window, his gaze calm. The culprit is able to commit crimes without restraint online because he has an accomplice. What's so strange about having an accomplice as a hostage? Director Huang was at a loss for words, but in the end he instructed, regardless of who the hostage is, as long as he's an ordinary citizen, you have to bring him back. Qin Imo pushed the silver lighter up, tilting his head to light a cigarette. He took a puff, his smile turning cold. Do you know why Z exists? Director Huang stilled. Even Bo Jiao, who was mentioned, stilled. Qin Imo flicked the cigarette ash. Because she never needs to save someone who looks like a hostage but is actually an accomplice. Qin Imo. There were too many things in Director Huang's voice, but the only thing that could be heard was his intention to stop Qin Imo. Qin Imo replied slowly, Don't worry, my thoughts won't affect my actions. I will save him. Director Huang heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Imo reached out to hang up. Bo Jiao typed asking, why? Even though he knew it was dark, he still walked forward and even wanted to save the accomplice hostage. What? Qin Imo tilted his head. Because of the accomplice, you have to send him to prison. Bo Jiao hadn't expected such an answer. She was suddenly reminded of the Almighty when he had been young. He would sit on the sofa and watch pornographic movies. Back then she had been different from the Almighty. She had been playing, dismantling her little keyboard, causing trouble without any regard for the law. She hadn't understood why those people had stood up to resist even though they knew they weren't strong enough. The Almighty had been a tiny figure, but when she had asked the question, his lips had lifted slightly, even his eyes had lit up. Because they are Chinese soldiers. Do you know what it means to be a Chinese soldier? They don't live in a white world. Even though they know it's dark ahead, they have to tear the darkness apart to welcome the light. At that time she hadn't been familiar with Mandarin. On the other hand, he drooled for a while at the Almighty who said this. The words of a good-looking person were also correct. Now that she thought about it, Bo Jiao lifted her thin lips. The person she had liked since young had always been like this. She could almost see the existence of justice in him. It wasn't black and white. It wasn't a gray area. It was a belief. It was fearlessness, morality, and even more so, the burden on his shoulders. Bo Jiao glanced at his grown face. She was reminded of the adorable and aloof pet when she had been young. She couldn't hold it in any longer. She turned and planted a kiss on Qin Mo's cheek. Qin Imo hadn't expected the youngster to react this way. His commanding voice paused for a moment. When he turned, his gaze deepened. Bo Jiao admired the Almighty's startled expression. She suddenly felt satisfied. She finally understood why those domineering CEOs in novels would tease their girlfriends at work. Chapter 1050. Bo Jiao's kiss wasn't a big deal. The second sports car that brushed past the Land Rover almost swerved. Wolf, what's wrong with you? You almost crashed into me. Can't you watch? You can't even see my beautiful sports car. How are you going to shoot at the enemy in the future? Magician treasured his car the most. Men's cars were all concubines, didn't they know that? As a pure Special Forces soldier who had been in the Army, Navy and Air Force, Wolf had always received red ideology. Really? He had never seen someone like the youngster. Moreover, his boss was the one who had been kissed. He wanted to gossip. But he wasn't a gossipy person. In his heart, a pure-blooded man should not say anything. He had to be a man with a story in his heart. Hence, when Magician asked him what was wrong, Wolf could only reply. Wolf could only force out a sentence. There's nothing. Drive. His fingers scratched the keyboard. Be a man, don't say anything. Today was destined to be an unwinnable battle. There wasn't the smoke of war that people talked about. But it was hidden in their daily lives. Cars were coming and going, and it was bustling with activity. Jiang City was as congested as ever. The bus stopped on the dedicated lane. The weather was too hot, they couldn't even get on the taxi immediately. The best mode of transportation was the subway. But Fanjia couldn't take the subway. If there was a camera at the place where she bought her ticket, the video would be captured. Qin Mo's guess was right. Fanjia chose to take a taxi. First, she let the taxi run around, and in the end she almost returned to the same place. She chose the most crowded KFC during the weekend to meet him. The person whom Fanjia had invited had arrived earlier than Fanjia. Both parties had sent photos. Fanjia didn't enter immediately. Instead, she observed the surroundings and smiled when she saw that there weren't any plainclothes officers. No matter how capable the crime squad was, they wouldn't be able to find someone she had randomly chosen. Have you waited long? Fan Jia maintained her cute and approachable image in front of others. She sat there with a cup of Coke in her hand. Was a girl. She wasn't old and considered herself to be mature. The more she looked at Fang Jia, the more she felt like she was going to tell her everything. I really don't understand why they're chasing us so relentlessly. When that person spoke, he added a helpless tone. There's no end to the case and it's causing such a big commotion. It's the same for our big boss's case as well. They insist on claiming plagiarism, but aren't they still fighting the lawsuit now? If they claim plagiarism because the plot is similar, then wouldn't all the books in the future be plagiarism? Initially, I quite like both books, but seeing how things have turned out, I really don't feel good. She shook her head. I'm not sure either. Forget it, what do you need my help with? The man smiled and said, Don't worry, we all support you. Fan Jia glanced up at the people who were looking at her. She put on her hat again. A little, I bought you some Coke. Have a sip and I'll tell you. Yes, it's fine. After taking a sip of the cola, the girl felt refreshed. After all, the weather was so hot. Fan Jia smiled and said something to her in a low voice. No one saw that the girl's eyes gradually became a little hazy. Then she didn't even know that she stood up on her own. Fan Jia led the girl forward, her left hand on the girl's shoulder. The girl yawned continuously until Fan Jia led the girl into the taxi. Only then did she wake up a little. Where are we going? We're going to sing. Fan Jia's voice was very slow. If you're tired, take a nap first. I'll wake you up when we arrive. The girl didn't know why, but after hearing Fan Jia's words, her eyelids started to feel heavy. In a short while, she fell asleep in the back seat. In such a situation, the taxi driver wouldn't notice anything amiss. Fan Jia took out some cash and got the driver to drive to another small county. Although the county was small, it was near the sea and there were many illegal immigrants. It was a short drive, which meant that as long as they reached there, Fan Jia would be able to leave the country successfully. Just to be sure, she had found a hostage and a ticking time bomb. Tying her to this person would at least buy her some time to escape. Fan Jia first dragged the girl to the top of a building that was being demolished. Just as she was about to set everything up, the girl's phone rang. It was the girl's mother. Fan Jia wanted to let her know what she was up to. Hence, she picked up the call without hesitation. Unexpectedly, a familiar deep voice came through. Fan Jia, right? The voice was noble and indifferent, without a hint of warmth. Fan Jia's fingers stilled. She had never expected it to be him. How did the crime squad find out about this girl? Fan Jia wasn't guarded at all. At this moment, she didn't know that Qin Mo was beside her. A silver-haired youngster's fingers were on the keyboard, her hair floating in the air as she typed out strings of code, hacking and hunting. Other than her hand speed, it was also her way of thinking that had been nurtured since young. From the day Bo Jio turned 1 month old, she had followed the rules of the Chinese clan and started grabbing things. She had grabbed onto a small keyboard and wouldn't let go. In the end, when she was a few years old, she managed to hack into an ATM machine. This meant that she was born to be a hacker. From then on, the hacker world had the strongest young lord. She pressed the spacebar and confirmed the tracking. Bo Jio glanced up, giving him an OK sign. The entire process took less than 20 seconds. Just as Fan Jia was about to escape, her expression darkened. When she glanced at the time bomb at the side, she calmed down. So what if it's me? Since you are able to enter this person's house, you should know that I have a hostage in my hands. This is the latest bomb, a big welcome gift for you after 3 years. I'll leave the phone here, it'll be a good opportunity for the parents to see their daughter's final appearance, don't you think so? Alright, let me tell you something, this person is an accomplice in the maiden's sacrifice case. Alright, it's time for you to make a choice, are you here to catch me, the real culprit, or are you here to save an accomplice? The girl's mother was listening at the side. When she heard this, she lost control and grabbed Qin Mo's hand. I beg you, save my daughter, I beg you. Qin Mo held onto his phone. According to procedure, the phone had to be on speaker at such a moment. Of course, Fan Jia could hear the voice even though it was a little soft. It seems like the parents are at the side. How should I choose? Bo Jio sucked on the lollipop, watching as Qin Mo exerted strength in his injured hand. She reached out and blocked his fingers, her eyes turning dark. The girl's mother reached out to cover her face, repeating, I beg you, save my daughter. Since you aren't speaking, it seems like you don't want to save her. Fan Jia took a step forward. This phone isn't bad, it's an apple. In order to get this phone, the girl even flaunted it online. I've checked, her family isn't that well off. Her mother is really pitiful, she doesn't have any power in her family and could only watch her daughter die. The moment the girl's mother heard this, she snatched the phone over, glaring at Qin Mo with hatred as though he was the most evil person. Bo Jio froze. Before she could say anything, Qin Mo's voice rang out. Where is the location? Prepare for action. The girl's mother lowered her guard towards Qin Mo, starting to plead. You heard it, he chose to save my daughter, you heard it. Fan Jia wasn't in the mood to listen to an old woman, hanging up the phone. In that instant, the room fell into silence. Qin Mo stood up and looked at the mother. His gaze swept past the white hair on her head that she had faked. His voice was neither fast nor slow. Just half a month ago, your daughter supported a plagiarist. The original author's mother is older than you. She stood outside the court, not knowing anything about the internet. She hugged her daughter's corpse and sued the heavens. The lawsuit has yet to end. Do you know why? Because there are countless people like your daughter who are accomplices. The mother stilled, tears welling up in her eyes. She watched as the tall figure walked out of the house. She wanted to say something, but something seemed to be stuck in her throat. Bo Jio glanced at the handsome and elegant face. In the end, she didn't get into the car. Instead, she closed the car door, flipped over the car, and headed towards the opposite side of the road. Before she left, she said, use your hands to save her. Mine? What did she say in the end? Qin Mo didn't hear her clearly. When he pushed the car door open, he could only see the youngster's back view. In the alley of Old Jiang City, there were some old grandpas using the most primitive method to shave their hair. There was a wash basin, a razor, and a white scarf. There was also a cigarette in his mouth. The barber of Old Jiang City lived a handsome life. However, he hadn't expected to see someone more handsome than him. He grabbed his razor and shouted, Grandpa, use this. With a flick of his fingers, he seemed to have tossed something over. In 3 steps, he kicked the wall with his long legs, his left hand hanging onto the edge of the wall. He flipped over the wall nimbly. The old man who had his head shaved was stunned when he saw this scene. It was mainly because the kid had thrown something into his hands. A pack of chunghwa? Mitch, this youngster isn't bad, he's good looking. The old grandpa chuckled as he commented, good wall flipping too. The barber wanted to shout, but you can't use a pack of zhonghua to exchange for my razor. Besides, I'm only 50, how can you call me grandpa? His words reverberated through the entire alley. Bo Jio fell from the wall, one hand on the ground. She shoved the razor into her waist, feeling a sense of security. The Almighty had been watching her closely recently. If she didn't carry a knife with her, she wouldn't have the confidence to go out. She glanced up and saw a kid wearing earphones, skateboarding. He was watching in shock as the person shoved the knife into his arms. What was wrong with him? Hey brother. Bo Jio had always been familiar with people. She walked over and placed a hand on the little boy's shoulder. The little boy chuckled and said, Uncle, who's your brother? Bo Jio. Did she look like an uncle to someone born in the 90s? Let's make a deal, handsome. Bo Jio placed a hand into her pocket, lowering her body. The little boy arched a brow. That's a good title. Tell me what deal. Give me the skateboard and I'll give you my wallet. Bo Jio smiled lightly. The little boy sized her up. I look like someone who needs money, don't try to corrupt me. How much can you give me? My entire wallet is with you, I'll get it from you later. Bo Jio's figure flashed, her long legs already on the skateboard. Using the momentum, she slid to the left and stood straight. It was just a simple flick, but the little boy was stunned. When he recovered, he slapped his head. Wait a minute. What's your name, uncle? Bo Jio didn't turn back. She bent down, cutting through the long alley like a line. As for how to lock onto the general route, it was simple. There was only one road that led to a county, and that county was near the sea. Bo Jio was a criminal. As a criminal, she knew the importance of geographical location. She glanced at the time on her phone. The skateboard skidded over the uneven ground, heading straight for the main road. At this moment, the warmth in his eyes disappeared completely. Release the criminal's image. Set up checkpoints along National Highway 1174. Wolf, magician, go over. The rest of you follow me to the city. Yes. The 4 sports cars separated once again. The difference was that this time, there was no driver in the Land Rover, only Qin Mo. As the steering wheel turned, the car smoothly slid past countless vehicles, and finally stopped under a building that was about to be demolished. It was obvious that Fan Jia had left. He even took the remote control with him. Apart from the timer, she could also operate it manually. However, based on her thoughts, It was obvious that she wouldn't let things end just like that. What she wanted to see was Qin Mo's pain. In order to get a person, she had to destroy his will first. Hence, Fan Jiao wasn't worried about being tracked. After all, who else could locate her other than Qin Mo? Tick-tock, tick-tock. When he heard these two sounds, he felt a chill down his spine. The girl who was tied up on the roof didn't know what had happened. The moment she opened her eyes, she was still a little confused, but when she saw the thing on her body, she felt afraid. She began to struggle, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't free herself from the restraints. Help, help. Following the cry for help was the sound of a door being slammed open. Qin Mo held a metal rod in one hand and a white bandage wrapped around the other. When he walked over, the girl stopped. There were still traces of tears on her face. She knew Qin Mo since she watched esports competitions. She called out in surprise, "Almighty Qin." Chapter 1051. Boss. The Special Forces soldier walked over, feeling that something wasn't right with his young master. The girl felt wronged. She couldn't understand why Almighty Qin had said that. The more she thought about it, the more afraid she became. Eventually she started crying. Qin Mo knelt down, glancing at the timer on the table. "Boss, this time bomb is hard to dismantle. The explosion range can spread to the surrounding area. We don't have professional tools. Why don't we wait?" The Special Forces soldier narrowed his eyes. "There's 5 minutes left. There wasn't enough time. Pass me the military knife." Qin Mo reached out, his side profile still handsome. "Go down." Was he going to dismantle the bomb himself? The Special Forces soldier didn't move. He knew his boss's ability, but it was too dangerous. He couldn't leave his boss alone. Qin Mo glanced up, his voice faint. "Go down." "Boss, I'll do it," the Special Forces soldier said. Qin Mo looked at him. "Who's faster? Me or you?" The Special Forces soldier didn't reply. Qin Mo tilted his head, swiping his fingers, his black hair flying in the wind. "I'll say it again, go down." The girl was still crying. Save me, you can't leave, save me." Selfish people were probably like that. In the face of danger, they would think about how they couldn't leave. The Special Forces soldier clenched his fingers. If his boss died here because of this person, he would probably take off his uniform and never join the team again. "I'll go down." Obeying orders was his duty. The girl wasn't having it. "Why is he leaving? Isn't he wearing his uniform? Shouldn't he stay to save me?" The video was on. This meant that the video would be uploaded online. When Qin Mo heard this, his eyes turned vicious. His fingers moved and the military knife shot out. It swept through the girl's hair and stabbed into the wooden board behind her. The girl was completely frightened, tears streaming down her face as she watched him. Qin Mo's voice rang out. "There's less than 5 minutes before the explosion. If you hadn't helped the murderer, you wouldn't be tied up here. You want a border guard to die with you? That's my soldier. I don't want to. If you want to live, I will save you. But I don't mind telling you that I don't want to save you. Why don't you talk more and die with me?" The girl finally calmed down. The Special Forces soldier was at the door, but he didn't leave. Defusing the bomb was like gambling with one's life. But they had to win. He knew what risk his boss was taking. Within a radius of 5 kilometers, if the bombs were not removed, something would happen. Even the best bomb disposal technician would need to calm down and think, but the girl's performance would undoubtedly affect others. Qin Mo raised his hand to check the time. His left hand, which was wrapped in a white bandage, tilted slightly, and the military knife was unsheathed. Under the glow of dusk, there was only determination and calmness on his face. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Fan Jiao locked her phone with her eyes still on the video. She wouldn't let him die. After all, her goal was to get him. What's more, what she wanted the most right now was to board the ship as soon as possible. As long as they passed through here and reached public waters, no one could easily catch them. Fanjia's lips curved upwards. She alighted from the cab, a faint smile on her face. It wasn't as if she hadn't encountered roadblocks along the way. Fortunately, those roadblocks were set up after she passed the toll booth. Even when the cab stopped, the driver was still saying, "I wonder what's going on today. There were roadblocks along the way." That's right. Fanjia was very good at pretending to be pitiful. "It looks rather scary." The driver reminded her out of goodwill. "You're a young lady, be careful when you're out. It isn't safe around here." "All right." When Fanjia lowered her head to pay the driver, she raised her hand and used the knife hidden in her hand to strangle the driver's throat. The driver reached out to grab his neck, his eyes wide open, wanting to call for help. Fan Jiao wiped her hands, her face expressionless as she pushed the driver out of the car. She drove a long distance before stopping the car. This place was very close to the pier where they could smuggle. The reason why Fan Jia attacked the driver wasn't just to silence him, but also to buy some time for the police. When they saw someone die, they would definitely investigate the murder case first. Using this time difference, she would be able to board the ship. The pier was huge. Qin Imo didn't have the time to search for traces of her boarding from the pier. Very quickly, Fan Jia heard a sharp scream. As expected, the few people who were patrolling the area immediately ran towards the source of the sound. But no one would care if they were smuggled. It was hard to manage a small place, there wasn't enough manpower and the villagers depended on this. If they really stopped the small business, they would lose their source of income. Hence, sometimes the management couldn't keep up. That was the reason why Fan Jia chose to stay here. Due to the lack of information, even if they knew something had happened, they wouldn't be able to confirm what had happened. People who died would go to see it. This was the best time for her to leave. Fan Jia was still wearing the clothes she had worn when she left school. She wore suitable glasses, which made her look even more harmless. No one would pay attention to a girl at such a time. Fan Jia lowered her lids. If someone took a glance, they would notice a hint of malice in her smile. Tick-tock, tick-tock. There was less than a minute left before the explosion. Qin Imo tilted his head. Just as he was hesitating on whether to choose the red or blue thread, his fingers paused, picking out a golden thread. The golden thread was hidden deep. If one wasn't careful, they wouldn't be able to notice it. Fan Jia retracted her gaze, not minding it. So what if he dismantled the bomb she had set up? Her ultimate goal was to escape. Fan Jia lifted her bag, smiling cutely as she walked forward. Gotcha. The military knife fell. Qin Imo broke the golden thread and the time stopped with his action. The frightened girl's body stiffened, and then she burst into tears again. The moment Qin Imo stood up, his uninjured hand moving forward, cuffing the person's wrist. Now that her life was no longer in danger, the girl's expression changed. Almighty Qin, what are you doing? What right do you have to cuff me, you? Qin Imo couldn't be bothered to talk to her, reaching for his phone, trying to call the youngster. No one picked up. The Special Forces soldier wanted to come over. Qin Imo took large strides heading downstairs. The girl didn't let him go. What right do you have to cuff me? Scram. That one word meant that Qin Imo's patience was at its limit. The girl was aggrieved, still about to cry. Qin Imo had already slammed the metal door, heading downstairs at an alarming speed. The Special Forces soldier had only seen such a boss 3 years ago when he was on a mission at the border. He seemed to have forgotten that his hand was wrapped in bandages. The wheels slid across the tarmac, a terrifying screeching sound. The Special Forces soldier pressed his earpiece. Locate the boss and follow. What exactly had happened for the usually calm young master to even forget to give an order? The Special Forces soldier was in charge of sending her away. The girl didn't just refuse to cooperate, she even questioned if he had to give her an explanation for handcuffing her so casually. The Special Forces soldier couldn't handle such a situation, handing it over to Magician. Magician chuckled, his gaze cold. Why are you in such a hurry? I'll give you an explanation. When the time comes, I'll call your mom and all your classmates. I'll let them ask you why you helped a murderer escape. Magician chuckled. You don't have evidence and yet you say he's a murderer. The girl laughed coldly. Can you find evidence first? Magician arched a brow. Who do you think you are? Even if I have evidence, I won't show it to you. Saving someone like you is the greatest humiliation in my life. What should I do? Since I'm with young master, I have to follow his rules. You should be thankful that we're wearing military uniforms. When was that? A person had brought him back from the border. They were around the same age, but he was dressed in military green, his figure tall and straight. He had only told him one sentence. You're Chinese, I'll bring you back. Young master was the same as before. Even though he had long put down his gun. But when he picked it up again, it was because he wanted to protect her. Magician felt that such a city wasn't suitable for people like them. After all, some people's actions and thoughts were chilling. The pervert who specialized in psychology had said that too. It's all thanks to young master. If it was anyone else, they would have changed after being chilled once, twice, or even the third time. That's probably bravery. No. The pervert laughed. Other than bravery, I discovered another secret. What is it? Young master said that if he changes, a certain someone won't be able to find him. That person still needs him to take care of her at the right time. If not, she will only play with her little keyboard and lose herself. Hence, before that happens he will always be like that. He asked who he was talking about. The pervert expressed that he didn't know either. These were all things he said when he was doing therapy for young master. From then on, young master didn't mention it again. Sometimes hard work wasn't scary. What was scary was that the person you saved wasn't worth saving. But this was the soldiers of China. No matter what happened, even if their hearts were chilled, they would always walk at the front and do what needed to be done. This was their duty and the path they chose. Some people said that they were glad that they were in China, that they didn't have to worry about any terrorist attacks because there would always be people who would appear to shoulder the burden. Human nature was really weird. We directed the most evil towards those who stood up and wanted to fight against injustice. But we gave the kindest consideration to evil. Luckily, there would always be justice in this world. Because some hot blood was still hidden in the depths of our hearts. It was an existence that wouldn't be extinguished no matter what happened. After reading the news, many people were waiting for the moment the criminal was caught. In front of the court. It was the third trial of a certain case. This time the mother was dressed up well. She even wore her best clothes and her jade bracelet, the bracelet her daughter had bought for her before she died. She welcomed the day with such an expression. It wasn't because she wasn't in pain. Even though she had lost a lot of weight, she didn't give up. She didn't want others to say that she didn't want to let go of the case because she wanted money. She welcomed the gazes with determination because she wanted to tell everyone that regardless of the outcome, she wouldn't give up. She would never retreat until justice was served before the corpses had turned cold. Fan Jiao was good at scheming, but she would never be able to predict how strong a weak mother would be for her daughter. She would never have expected that other than Qin Mo, there would be someone else who could catch her. Time trickled by. Many people had gathered around the murder case. Passers-by would stop to take a look. The sight of the blood-stained grass was a little scary. Usually ordinary people would avoid this area. But there was an unusual one. A tall and slender figure got out of the car and stood on the spot. There was a skateboard under his feet, and his reflection on the painted road was very long. When the wind blew, his hair was dyed golden by the dusk. The diamond earring on his left ear flashed with a sharp glint. The figure watched for a while, trying to determine something. Then the skateboard turned around, swung its tail, and skated in another direction. At this hour there were many people who wanted to cross the sea. After all, there was a small island in the middle of the sea on the other side of the pier. Those who lived on the island had to go back eventually. Fan Jiao walked among them, talking about the murder case with the people beside her. The more heated the discussion, the more attention she could divert. But when a middle-aged woman said, "I don't know what's wrong with people nowadays, they are different from us in the past. At least we know that there are some things we shouldn't do. Now we just have to pretend to be wronged after stealing and robbing. Murder is even more despicable. I hope we can catch the culprit as soon as possible." A vicious glint flashed across Fan Jia's eyes. The boat was about to arrive and she couldn't reveal anything amiss. Once they were on the boat, she would throw anyone who dared to say such things off the boat and drown them in the sea. After an unknown period of time. Even a minute was a little slow for Fan Jia, who was waiting to leave. Even though there wouldn't be any other changes, she wanted to leave as soon as possible just in case. Finally, she heard the sound of a boat. It was a rectangular boat, a little different from the usual speedboats used in the Golden Triangle. The speed of the boat was very fast. Once she boarded the boat, no one would be able to catch up to her. Fan Jia believed that she would be able to return to the Golden Triangle soon. When she returned, no one would be able to stop her. The sound of the boat got closer. There were already people boarding the boat. After all, it was such a hot day, no one wanted to stay on the shore for long. It was Fan Jia's turn. She sheathed her knife and smiled slowly. It was time to celebrate in advance. Chapter 1052. There was a loud swoosh. From the stairs not far away, something flew over with a sharp gust of wind, brushing past Fan Jia's face. If Fan Jia hadn't taken a step back at the last moment, Fan Jia would have been dead. If Fan Jia hadn't taken a step back at the last moment, that huge object would have landed on her face. But when it landed and spun, the crowd finally saw what it was. A skateboard? Fan Jia's eyes dimmed. She lifted her head. Before anyone could react, the figure standing on the steps made a sharp somersault in the air, evaded the flow of people, and passed by handsomely. His feet stepped on the pile of stones beside the seaway as a fulcrum for the second time, and he gave a heavy kick. His action was so handsome that it made people dumbfounded. Under the light, Fan Jia saw a youngster, her silvery hair falling with the sea breeze. She wore a black mask as she walked towards her. The youngster's dark red t-shirt puffed up in the sea breeze, revealing the fair skin around her waist. The lines were beautiful and eye-catching. Who was it? Fanjia narrowed her eyes. She couldn't see the person's face, but deep down she knew he was coming for her. With a tug, she grabbed the middle-aged woman beside her and pushed her forcefully. Ah! In an instant, screams filled the entire pier. Someone fell into the sea. The moment the words left her mouth, the crowd descended into chaos. Fanjia knew that she wouldn't be able to escape no matter who the culprit was. She glanced at the fearful faces of the people present and shrunk back into the boat, pretending to be afraid. It's the killer from the coast. Leave, everyone leave. At such a moment, the paler her expression was, the more sympathy she could garner. Furthermore, it was a pitiful sight. Since ancient times, no one had a good impression of someone who came with a menacing aura. On the contrary, the person who acted pitiful would put up a facade, even if they had evil intentions. Hence, when the crowd heard Fanjia's words, their gazes towards Bojio changed. With the mask on her face, they didn't see her as a good person. Instead, they avoided the tall youngster as though she was the plague. They boarded the boat in a panic. The boat wasn't big, it only had a small deck. Hurry up and sail. It was obvious that everyone was afraid. With Fanjia's shout, the pilot instinctively did as he was told. The scene was extremely chaotic. Bojio watched as the ship started to move. Her dark gaze swept over the propellers that were about to sink. Her fingers moved. It was the razor she had taken from the old man in the alley. Using the force of his body to the side, he avoided the crowd and directly stabbed the ship's propeller, getting stuck on the ship's wheel. After hearing 3 tut-tut-tut sounds, even with the engine roaring, the ship was unable to move forward immediately. Bojio made use of the time difference to leap and land on the deck. The people on the boat picked up whatever they had on them. Survival was everyone's instinct. But at the same time, cowardice was also an instinct of everyone. Even if someone was holding a metal rod from the ship, he didn't dare to swing it directly. Instead, he threw it over. Originally, it was aimed at the youngster's head. The youngster tilted her head, twisting her legs to catch the metal rod. Then she stood up nimbly. She was so fast that no one could see her movements clearly. Bojio was already standing there. Her left hand was cut because she had thrown the razor. Fresh blood flowed down her fingers. Her right hand was holding onto a metal rod. Her handsome face was covered by a black mask, revealing only a pair of black and white eyes. She had black earrings, a red t-shirt and silver hair. At this moment, the youngster looked like the leader of a hot-blooded high school. Unknowingly, when the crowd saw this scene, they instinctively opened up a path. It was probably because of fear. Some people were calling the police while others were calling for help. Bojio didn't bother about them. Her gaze was locked onto Fanjia, who was pushing the crowd aside and running towards the back of the ship. The ship wasn't that big. Fanjia could only make use of the people on the ship. She caught a person in her hands, no longer concealing her true nature. She placed the knife on the person's throat, her gaze darkening. The person who was caught paled. She widened her eyes, turning towards Bojio. Her gaze was pleading for help. Bojio stilled. That gaze was too familiar. It was familiar enough for her to freeze on the spot when she wanted to charge over without a care for anything else. Don't let yourself turn completely black. Bojio tightened her grip, the sound of her joints cracking. Even the metal rod in her hands seemed to be able to feel the pain. Little Jio, do you know why your code name is Z? Little Bojio glanced at the grave in front of her, shaking her head. Back then she hadn't understood. 0. You have to remember you should be 0. You shouldn't be restricted by anything. At the same time, you shouldn't be controlled by the darkness because you are standing in it. Bojio glanced up at Fanjia, who was standing at the back of the ship. Fanjia's glasses were gone. Her face was adorable, but it carried a smile that didn't match her face. Don't come over. You can see that person's face is very tender. Fanjia moved her hand again. The screams rang out again. Bojio stood there, the sea breeze ruffling her hair. Who are you? Fanjia gritted her teeth. She had to find out who had forced her to this state. Bojio glanced up, the black earring glinting. She asked faintly, what do you think? Something flashed past Fanjia's mind. You are Z? I should praise you for being able to recognize me after impersonating me for so long. Aren't you shameless? Bojio maintained her carefree attitude, but her eyes scanned the surroundings. Fanjia smirked. So it's you. Your name is so useful. Some of my supporters don't care if I'm the real Z. What? You can't take it anymore after I snatched your halo? Halo? Bojio played with the word, her lips lifting. I'm not interested in being supported by a bunch of idiots. If you want, I'll give it to you. Fanjia's gaze dimmed. You're still so arrogant. I advise you to put down the metal rod in your hand. Otherwise I'll kill her. Since you're here, I'll say you killed her. Who asked you to not save her? That explains why my dad always says it's easier to be a bad person than a good person. Bojio tapped the side of the boat with the metal rod. With a loud bang, she straightened the rod and pointed the other end at Fanjia. Her aura was unstoppable, but her voice was filled with laughter. Do you think I'm like China Mo, choosing between the two? Don't forget, you're a criminal and so am I. Fanjia's expression changed. She had never expected Z to do this to her. She watched as the youngster walked towards her. With every step, Fanjia's expression changed. The girl held hostage by Fanjia had tears in her eyes. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were lowered as though she was trying to say something. She watched the youngster who could possibly save her. Her gaze wavered. She couldn't even hear the cry for help. Fanjia saw that this path wasn't going to work and started to have other thoughts. She moved her fingers, taking something out. Taking advantage of this gap, Bojio exerted strength in her wrist, lifting the metal rod and throwing it towards Fanjia. In order to avoid the strong impact, Fanjia had to let go of the girl she was holding. This way the girl's head would definitely hit the wrench of the boat. The girl's eyes were shut. But in the blink of an eye, the youngster, who everyone thought was going to continue attacking, suddenly turned around. Her injured right hand held onto the girl's hand. Then she pulled the hostage over. The youngster arched her body, her back pressing heavily against the wrench, using her body to block most of the impact. The girl looked at the youngster in disbelief. Then she glanced down at his bleeding hand. Something flickered in her eyes. But the youngster didn't even wait for her to thank him. He stood up and dashed into the distance. But at this moment, Bojio had already distanced herself from Fanjia. There was a small boat in that direction. There was only a fisherman on the boat. It was easy for Fanjia to deal with him. The moment she jumped over, she kicked him into the sea. Bojio wanted to jump over, but the next second she froze. Fanjia turned the rudder of the small boat and smiled. It seems like criminals are different. You can't be more ruthless than me, Z. Across the sea. Bojio stood at the bow of the boat and watched Fanjia. Fanjia's smile deepened. I'll give you the last time bomb. Are you coming to catch me or are you staying to save these people? It seems like you can only choose the latter. Bojio lowered her lids and shifted her long legs. She glanced at the bomb before glancing up at Fanjia. Your knife was used to stop the ship from leaving. Even the metal rod was used to save people. Z, you should just be a criminal. Why did you have to save people? It's so fake. After Fanjia said this, she turned the rudder and started the small ship. Fanjia's eyes lit up. She looked at the small ship and said, Z, you're an all-rounder. You need tools to defuse a bomb, right? Even the metal rod was used to save people. Bojio glanced back. There were many people standing behind her. They were defenseless, looking at her as though they were about to tear up. She glanced at Fanjia. A little boy appeared in front of her. Do you know what it means to be a Chinese soldier? A Chinese soldier knows that even if there's darkness ahead, he will tear it apart to welcome the light. Bojio retracted her long legs and squatted down. She looked at the time bomb in front of her. It was obvious that Fanjia hadn't given anyone any extra time. From the moment she had decided on the time, she had decided to let Z die here as well. The countdown was less than 30 seconds. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound was accompanied by the sea breeze. Every beat seemed to be forcing everyone's heart. Despair that had never been seen before swept across everyone's face. There was a mother and son on the boat. The child was carried on the back of the mother's bamboo basket. He didn't know what was happening and was crying loudly. Bojio retracted her gaze. Fanjia was right. She had nothing left. She narrowed her eyes and observed the destructive power of the bomb. It was a small bomb. Even if it wasn't powerful, it would be able to kill half of the people on the boat the moment it exploded. Those who were strong and could swim started to jump off the boat. There were only a few women and children left on the boat. Bojio clenched her fists. She seemed to have thought of something. She bent down and removed the red t-shirt from her body. At this moment, she was only left with a white singlet and a white bandage wrapped around it. Her silver-gray hair had been splashed into the sea. When it fell, the crowd watched as the youngster bent her waist. Everyone could only see the young man bending his waist, the lines of his back beautiful. His t-shirt was wrapped around the bomb. Then he reached out and pulled something over. Then, with a sweep of his long legs, he shouted, "Everyone retreat." Tick-tock, tick-tock. It was the last 5 seconds. The youngster placed the metal piece in front of her chest. She exerted strength in her legs. There was a loud explosion in midair. Then she fell into the sea. The waves and the continuous explosion spread to the side of the boat. That kind of impact directly hit the young man's body. There was a loud bang. Fresh blood flowed from the youngster's mouth. She was smashed into the sea. The seawater swept over from all directions. Fan Jia, who was in the distance, turned over when she heard the sound. She smiled. Let's see if you can survive this." How foolish, thinking about saving others. She even forgot that she was afraid of water. How dare she act like a hero? Fan Jia reached out and turned the rudder. She increased the speed of the boat and made use of time to disappear into the distant sea. When the explosion happened, everyone's ears were ringing. Fragments of the red t-shirt could be vaguely seen on the burning sea surface. That the red t-shirt had been reduced to pieces. It was inevitable that someone was injured. After all, it was a bomb. It wasn't a small matter. Fortunately, the boat wasn't destroyed. There was enough space for rescue. Everyone was still alive even if they were exhausted. The people who survived the disaster started to tear up. The only one missing was the youngster who had bent over and taken off his t-shirt. He was wearing a mask. There was a moment of silence in the air. Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know what to say at this moment. Or rather, nothing was right. It wasn't right to treat that person as a criminal. It was even more wrong to not be able to differentiate the person with the worst illness. It was impossible not to feel guilty. When the girl touched the blood on her hands, she looked at the surface of the sea. Tears flowed from her eyes. She wanted the youngster who had decided to sacrifice his life to save them to come back. Chapter 1053. The flames continued to burn. Even the seawater started to churn. The mother who was carrying the child carried him up and placed her palms together. She probably heard the deepest wish in everyone's heart. Suddenly a wave surged. The silver-haired youngster was holding onto a piece of wreckage. He surged out of the sea and floated along with the waves. In the sea, as long as one's body wasn't stiff, holding onto a floating object would allow one to survive. After all, the density of seawater was higher than fresh water. Hence, the buoyancy of seawater was higher than fresh water. Even if one didn't know how to swim, it was still possible to float. This wasn't a miracle. It was a gamble. If she won, she would be able to hold onto a certain piece of wreckage. But it was obvious that she had lost consciousness after being blown away by the explosion. If there was anything that kept her going, it would be the fact that she hadn't kidnapped the Almighty yet. She hadn't cured the Almighty's hand. She hadn't told her pet that she was back. It was just that he had forgotten about her. But it was too tiring. After she had moved, she had been playing by herself. Her little keyboard hadn't been broken ever again. She wouldn't climb over anyone's wall anymore. There wasn't anyone like him who would tell her a bedtime story while lying beside him, complaining that she would dirty his bedsheets. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of looking for her canine pet. She had even run away from home once, bringing along her little keyboard. But it was that time that she had run away from home. Her protective net had been completely destroyed. The hacker family had been dealt a heavy blow. There were too many things. As the seawater rushed to her lips, Bojio's last bit of strength was depleted. The girl who had been standing on the boat took a step forward in excitement when she saw the youngster. And at this moment, the figure that was originally floating towards the ship suddenly started to descend. The girl paused, turning back to grab onto someone. "Which one of you knows how to swim? Who knows how to swim?" "I know." The child's mother was the first to step forward. Next was a middle-aged woman. "I know too." Without any hesitation, the two of them jumped off the boat with a loud thud. They followed the wreckage down until they saw the youngster. Without any hesitation, they held their breaths and continued down. The girl standing on the ship was not idle either. She looked left and right, using all her strength to pull the life jacket and long rope that every ship had. The rope was so heavy that she couldn't drag it by herself. This was the most urgent moment. This was because once a person was in the water, they would become especially heavy. In addition, once there was a phenomenon of falling, it would be very difficult to rescue a person. She had to throw the rope down to ensure that the ant and ant could really save the young man. In the seawater, the Andy had lived in this area for many years. She was a good swimmer and could hold her breath for a long time, but even so, she could not hold on for long. She had to catch the youth as soon as possible and stop him from sinking. Although this was not the deep sea, it was deep enough to make people unable to come back up after going down. The light at the bottom of the sea was always particularly clear. Bojio closed her eyes. Her long lashes drooped, forming a circle of shadows. Right now she was only left with her consciousness. That realization made her remember something. Chapter 1054. Caught it. That was the only thought in the middle-aged woman's mind. But it was too heavy, the slightest movement would tire her out. At this moment, the middle-aged woman was out of energy. She had to float up to the surface to take a breath. She used her fingers to help the middle-aged woman up. Then she turned her head and swam upwards, leaping out of the sea. She panted heavily, shouting at the girl on the boat, "No, the two of us can't do it. Is there anyone else who knows how to swim?" The girl didn't know how to swim. If she did, she would have jumped down long ago. Use the rope. Time seemed to be precious at this moment. They were afraid that even the middle-aged woman who was good at swimming wouldn't be able to hold on. Fortunately, there was still time. The girl pulled the middle-aged woman with all her might. She gritted her teeth, grinding her hands so hard that it hurt. But she only managed to move a little. Whether it was her or the auntie who was waiting on the surface of the sea, their eyes were filled with anxiety and gradually surging despair. The next second the girl stilled. Because of the weight in her hands. She turned back. There were less than 20 people left on the boat. Together they pulled the thick rope and tossed it into the sea. Hurry up. Save him first. Tie the rope to the youngster. Let's pull him back. The middle-aged woman held onto the youngster tightly, dragging him upwards. The moment the middle-aged woman caught the rope, she plunged into the sea. She used all her strength to pull the rope downwards. As the number of ropes on the deck increased, the two of them finally gathered in the middle. The middle-aged woman helped the middle-aged woman hold onto the youngster, gesturing for the middle-aged woman to take a breather. She swiftly wrapped the rope around the youngster's body and tugged the rope downwards, hinting for the people on the deck. The middle-aged woman didn't leave. She could still hold on, helping out. Pull. A loud sound came from the boat. Everyone was doing their best. When they pulled the rope up, their palms turned red from the strain. Fighting for time was fighting for a chance of survival. Finally, 90 seconds after the youngster fell into the sea, the silver-gray hair floated out of the sea once more. Everyone hurriedly lifted her up. Even though their rescue method was clumsy, everyone tried their best to help the youngster lie flat on the deck. I've learned medical skills, I can do resuscitation. All of you open up some space and let the air flow in. The power of unity, even if it was small, could create miracles when they gathered together. However, when the person who had studied medicine placed his hands on the young man's chest, his eyes widened in shock. It should be said that she was not the only one. More than half of the 20 people on the ship were stunned. But they didn't think too much about it. The man kept pushing his chest open and said, "Come back to life, child, come back to life." As seawater spilled out of the youth's mouth, his chest heaved up and down again. Everyone's eyes were filled with joy and gratitude. She thanked the young man for saving her, and thanked the heavens for allowing them to save this child. However, regardless of whether it was the girl or the aunties, all of their gazes fell on the young man's white singlet. Chapter 1055. The seawater on his body hadn't dried yet. When he licked the corner of his lips, there was a unique saltiness. Something in the youngster's trousers rang. It was the ringtone of a phone. Faint music spread from the deck. Life is as long as fireworks. The world is as big as our smile. Only when they heard the voice did they shift their gazes away. Only 3 words were flashing on the screen. Little Secretary M.O. The phone kept ringing. They didn't know if they should pick it up for the youngster. Only the last bit of warmth remained in the dusk. Under the light, the youngster lay there, her right hand still stained with blood. Her black lashes drooped, her androgynous face covered by her silver hair. The other side was exposed, pale and exquisite. In such a small place, no one would watch esports competitions. No one recognized her. But the youngster appeared like this. She definitely didn't want anyone to see her face. Honestly, everyone was dumbfounded by her true identity. I never expected a girl. The middle-aged woman reached out, caressing her head. Fortunately, we dragged her back. She isn't even as old as my daughter. Isn't that right? She's too young, isn't she just 18? She probably doesn't want anyone to recognize her. Otherwise she wouldn't have appeared wearing a mask. The people on the ship exchanged glances, more or less understanding in their hearts. The girl at the side stood up abruptly, removing her jacket and placing it on the youngster. "Sister, there's this." A little boy ran over with his short legs, holding the black mask that Bojio had worn during the fight. The girl reached for it, squatting down, pausing for a moment before passing the mask to the little boy. The little boy was a little munchkin, his head small. He glanced at his mother before lowering his head seriously, placing the mask back on the youngster's face. "Brother, you're so handsome." The people at the side couldn't help chuckling when they heard the childish voice. "It's sister." "He's obviously brother, I'll be as handsome when I grow up." The little boy used his fingers to caress Bojio's face. "Why isn't brother awake yet?" "She's too tired and needs to rest." This was the person who had performed the resuscitation. She reached out and caressed the little boy's head. The little boy thought about it and took out a lollipop from his pocket. "This is my last candy. My mother only allows me to eat 2 a day. When my brother wakes up, I will give this to him. My mother said that we have to thank the person who saved our lives. If I die, I will never be able to see my classmate Xiaohua again. You have to know that I have been chasing after her for so long. I really don't want to die here." Such childish words made everyone stare blankly for a moment, and then they laughed. The ship could no longer sail. Just like that, he was placed a kilometer away from the shore and could only wait for rescue. There was an explosion. Everyone present was already rushing over as fast as they could. However, it was a small place after all, and there was no professional reaction speed. They had just boarded the ship. On the other side of the sea, there was already a ship sailing away from the coastline. His speed was shockingly fast. Chapter 1056. Behind him, another 4 ships set off. The people who managed this place all year round had never seen a ship that could be driven like this. Not only was it fast, but the uniformity of their movements was also amazing. It was as if they could split apart the fog in front of them. It was unstoppable. No one dared to rush into the vicinity of the explosion without hesitation. After all, the ship had already started to leak oil. No one could predict if there would be a second explosion. Even the people on the shore were still waiting for professional protective gear. They hadn't expected to see 5 ships set off from the same place. Without hesitation, they headed straight for the center. In reality, the people on the ships knew that they might not be saved immediately, because there was still a fire burning around them. Those who came over had to think about the chances of being saved. They waited for the time to pass. Someone hugged the little boy. They were all waiting. Maybe they couldn't wait. Even if they couldn't wait, they wouldn't blame anyone. After all, the situation was too difficult. Until the first roar of the ship came from the fire. Then the second, third, and fourth voices rang out. The mother who was hugging the baby and the little boy stood up. The others turned to look in disbelief. They saw the intense fire in the sea of wreckage. One after another, figures in camouflage uniforms rushed in with the ships. We had heard it countless times. After an earthquake, there were very few survivors. They knew it was dangerous. Some people had even given up on living. However, at this moment, streaks of military green fell from the sky and changed everything. They weren't abandoned. Even in a dangerous situation, there was still a streak of military green that didn't fear the wind and rain. The people stood up. Only those who had experienced it personally would understand how touching it was. Chinamo was the first to jump onto the deck. The girl beside him noticed that his hand was still wrapped in bandages. No one knew why. Although there were only 5 of them, as long as he saw the clothes they were wearing, his heart inexplicably calmed down. At this moment, Chinamo wasn't calm anymore. Those who were familiar with him would know that his eyes were bloodshot. Even his thoughts were a little chaotic. He wasn't his usual self. Very few people knew. Chinamo, who seemed to have no weaknesses, was very resistant. Be it river or sea water. He wasn't willing to come into contact with them. Perhaps he was crazy. He had always been strong, but the moment he boarded the boat, the first thing he said was, "Have you seen little Bojio?" No one knew how many times he had repeated this form of address in the deepest part of his consciousness. "Have you seen little Bojio?" The middle-aged woman at the side looked at the handsome, pale face of the newcomer and suddenly realized something. She turned around and several people made way for him. "Are you looking for this child?" When Chinamo heard that, he turned around abruptly. His gaze fell on the other end of the deck. There was a young man lying there. His hair was wet and stuck to the back of his ear, revealing the black earring that symbolized his identity. The young man looked very quiet, and the side of his face was plated with a layer of light. Chapter 1057. When he saw this scene, Qin Mo's Adam's apple moved. Qin Mo's Adam's apple moved. Something tugged at his heart, reminding him of the emptiness he couldn't grasp when he had reached out his hand. His head felt as though it was about to explode. There was a voice that told him. The most important person to him was no longer around. In the depths of his memory. Momo, do you want to drink water? I don't know how to cook, but I know how to pour water. Tell me, how much money do you want before you admit that you're mine? I'm very rich and I can give you everything. Momo, do you want to drink water? Momo's eyes lit up. Momo, do you want to drink water? Idiot, shut up. He could ignore everyone, but he couldn't ignore the person who always liked to play with the little keyboard in front of him. His ears turned red, but he was afraid that his illness would be transmitted to her. However, the feeling of being hugged was too good. He didn't want to let this person go. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the man. As long as she was by his side, it would be fine. As long as the person who had turned his world upside down was still by his side. But for some reason, that person disappeared and never came back. Qin Mo gritted his teeth. He felt as though he was hallucinating. After shaking off some things, his deep and dark eyes regained their clarity. It was probably too painful. He could only use this method to divert his attention. His mouth was filled with blood. He focused his gaze. Then he walked towards Bojio. He bent down and placed one knee on the floor. Then he used strength and carried the youngster up. This was the scene magician and the others saw when they rushed over. This group of people understood Qin Mo the best. The boss they knew had never been so gentle. No, it wasn't just gentle. It was the kind of person who was afraid of breaking the person in his arms. He turned his head carefully and planted a light kiss on her head. He had never knelt and was filled with pride. At this moment he was in the most defenseless position. The people on the boat saw the kiss too. No one spoke. A myriad of emotions surged in everyone's heart. Qin Mo carried Bojio and stood up. He turned around and bowed slightly. Thank you. The word, thank you. What was he thanking them for? Everyone present understood. Thank you for pulling her up. Thank you for the first aid. Thank you for putting on the mask for her. The girl standing next to her covered her mouth and said with a sob, we should thank her. This sentence. The youth could not hear it. However, her fingers seemed to have sensed something. They moved slightly and grabbed onto the corner of Qin Mo's shirt tightly. Qin Mo lowered his lids and looked at his bleeding right hand. His voice was hoarse. I'm sorry I'm late. Be good, I'll take you home now. When the rest of them heard this, they felt extremely uncomfortable. Because everyone knew. In order to get here as soon as possible, the young master's hand was almost crippled. Fortunately, this youngster was fortunate. Flames filled the air. The rescue continued. More than 20 people were brought ashore. The little boy watched as Qin Mo hugged the person and was about to leave. He ran over and called out to Qin Mo, Big brother, this is for little brother. When he wakes up and cries out in pain, you can give him this. Chapter 1058. When Qin Mo looked at the pair of eyes, it was as if some scenes had flashed through his mind. But the speed of the images was too fast. It was so fast that Qin Mo couldn't catch it. But the scene in front of him was so familiar. It was so familiar that he felt that he had seen the same person holding a lollipop high above her head to pass it to him. Momo, eating sweets can make people feel better. I heard from Grandpa and that you used to like staying in China. Now that you're here, you're not used to it. You even miss your mother. I miss my mother too. I'll sit beside you and think with you. She said that she wanted to think with him. In the end, the small figure glanced at the candy in her hand and then at him. Momo. Speak. We'll think while eating the candy. It's sweet. Okay. I'll help you open the wrapper and feed it to you. No need. Why? Those movies on TV are all about domineering CEOs feeding their secretaries. Why don't you try looking at those messy things again? Eat your candy and are you an idiot? Domineering CEO you? What idiot? I'm smart. Don't be unconvinced. Go ask the street and see who can beat me. Come here. Do what? Teach you how to be a lady, idiot. I'm not an idiot. I'm someone who wants to be a domineering CEO. Just you wait, Humph. The image was too blurry. It was so blurry that Qin Mo could only catch bits and pieces of it. But he felt like he was searching for flowers in the fog as if there was something between them. Brother, big brother. The little boy tilted his head. When he saw that Qin Mo didn't speak, he called out again, Big brother, are you asleep? Chinamo suddenly came back to his senses. He waited for the piercing pain to pass before he reached out to take the candy from the little boy's hand. Thank you. I'll tell her what you said. The little boy smiled brightly. You're welcome. We're both so handsome. It's only right. After he finished speaking, he skipped away and returned to his mother's side. When Chinamo saw this, he expressed his gratitude once again. The mother caressed the little boy's head. Her gaze was gentle. After the explosion, the media and paramedics would definitely come to the scene. At this moment, the black mask on the young man's face played a crucial role. Other than the people on the ship, no one knew Bojio's true appearance. No one knew that the youngster who had saved so many lives was actually a girl. No matter where it was, this matter caused quite a stir. When Director Huang rushed over, all he saw was Chinmo's back. Magician looked at him, shaking his head, implying that Fan Jia hadn't caught him. Even Director Huang was unwilling to give up. However, there was one good thing. Fan Jia's true identity had been exposed. All of her information will be recorded, and an international manhunt will be launched. The most important thing was that this time, they had found the traitor hidden in the Major Crimes Division. Based on those messages, no matter what the other party's identity was, they would definitely receive the punishment he deserved this time. However, now was not the time to talk about this. In the Land Rover, Chinamo drove at the maximum speed. Before the car arrived, all the medical equipment and personnel of the Qin family were ready. Chapter 1059. The lights in the Qin family's house hadn't dimmed since midnight. Chinamo stood beside the bed. The others didn't dare to stop him, probably because they had never seen their young master in such a state. His left hand was tightly clenched as he suppressed his anger. The seawater aura around him hadn't dissipated. Even the white bandage on his hand was stained with blood. Chinamo didn't seem to feel it, he was focused on wiping the sweat off the youngster who was having a nightmare. Bojio had a restless sleep. She had dreamt of too many things. The first time her pet had left her. Her father had told her, "Jio, you have to learn to bear with it because you are the young lord of the hacker world and are destined to be alone for the rest of your life." The second time, she had lived recklessly because she didn't have to bear the responsibilities. She had lost the person who was always on her shoulders, the person who liked to act coquettishly and protect her no matter what happened. The last time she had dreamt that Hoshino had been caught. Her dreams were very messy and she was powerless in them all. How did he suffer such a serious injury? Madame Zhang asked the doctor softly with a bowl of porridge in her hands, her heart aching for him. The doctor shook his head and walked out. Young Master probably didn't want anyone to know about young Master Jio's injury, otherwise he wouldn't have brought him home. Madame Zhang, you don't have to ask about the reason, just take care of him. Now that young Master Jio is awake, he should eat something light, it's nothing serious. Young Master's hand, it's time to change the dressing. Young Master Jio has been changing it for the past 2 days. Now that he isn't awake, young Master? Madame Zhang sighed. I'll see if I can persuade him at the right time. That's the only way. The private doctor walked towards Chinamo. Young Master Jio's internal organs aren't damaged. Other than a slight concussion, everything is normal. Young Master Jio should wake up before dawn. Young Master should rest early. I understand. When Chinamo said these 3 words, Mo Rua's eyes lit up. The doctor wasn't sure how much Chinamo had heard. After everything was done, he left the room with Madame Zhang, leaving the room to the 2 of them. Chinamo, who had been standing by the side of the bed, sat down, his bandaged hand caressing the youngster's face until the phone in his pocket rang. Only then did he withdraw his hand and press the call button. Hello. If we want to convict that person, we still need some evidence. After a moment of silence, Director Huang continued, if it's just a text message, it can only prove that he leaked the meeting. We can't punish him severely. I'm sorry. Chinmo's handsome face didn't change much after he heard that. Director Huang was about to say something when he saw Zhang Ruiqiang's silence. Chinmo replied, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Hello. Director Huang glanced at his darkened phone screen and the bustling scene outside. Now he could only hope that Chinmo had a solution. After hanging up the phone, Chinmo dialed a number. It's rare that you would contact me. It was Rao Rong. Even to this day, when his voice came through the phone, it was still the same as when he played as a team control sorcerer. It was soft like the rain but couldn't be ignored. Chinmo lowered his lids, his voice unchanged. He had no intention of beating around the bush. Was Wang Chuanlei the one who killed your father? Rao Rong had never imagined that he would hear the name of the person he had to bite his fist every night to stop himself from killing with a knife. But it was that name. It was so hypocritical that he could even vomit during his meal. At that time, Rao Rong had thought of reporting it to the relevant authorities. There had been one time when he had almost succeeded. But some people had accused him of framing the other party. So what if he had been a god of esports back then? People who didn't know how to pretend to be wrong didn't seem to have a way out in this world. He had watched as the culprit escaped right in front of his eyes and told him in private, "Wake up, you can never do anything to me." Back then he had been so naive. He had thought that with evidence he would be able to get justice for himself. In reality, he hadn't been afraid of power and hadn't been afraid of losing his life. What had caused him to lose everything was the inability of those people to differentiate right from wrong. The culprit would always hide behind, revealing a smile and pretending to be wronged at the right time. Rao Rong had missed an opportunity. The other party had risen higher and higher, using his father's credit to rise higher and higher. In the end, he couldn't even take revenge. Rao Rong was clear that the evidence in his hands was enough to kill Wang Chuanlei thousands of times. But he didn't believe it anymore. It wasn't that he didn't believe in the law, he just didn't believe in the human heart. "Give me the evidence in your hands." Qin Mo's voice rang again. "I will send him to jail." Rao Rong stood up, his fingers supporting his forehead as he chuckled. "Qin Mo, do you think everyone is good? That's not it. Some people don't have a sense of right and wrong. You might not be able to succeed, so how can I believe you?" "I studied psychology." Qin Mo held onto his phone, his emotions calm. "I know how selfish humans can be. To punish Wang Chuanlei, we still lack the most critical evidence. This time, it's up to you to decide if you want to let him end his life." Rao Rong paused. After a while he spoke again. "I remember there was a previous case, a legal case. It is still in court and the fans of the perpetrator are still saying that he isn't guilty." Qin Mo's gaze deepened. "Those who are my accomplices aren't fit to be called humans and their voices can be ignored." "What else are you trying to say?" Rao Rong broke into a sudden laugh. "I'll give you the evidence. I want to appear in court personally and see Wang Chuanlei go to jail." "All right." The two almighties who had once been on par with each other in the esports world were going to join hands. This time, it seemed as though they were going to let everyone know what was right and wrong. When Director Huang received Qin Mo's call, it was already 4 minutes later. "Tomorrow morning, Rao Rong will bring all the evidence he has gathered to the crime squad." Qin Mo's voice was faint. "You have to see it personally. Uncle Rao has many students and there are some in the crime squad that he used to lead. All of them are trying to avoid suspicion. If we want to win, we have to win with innocence. We owe someone an entire year of glory and apology." Director Huang's throat bobbed. "Understood. Also." Qin Mo's gaze shifted. "How is the hostage I saved reacting?" Director Huang suddenly remembered something. "Stop, she has been causing a ruckus, asking if we are using force. She wouldn't be in danger if we didn't chase after her, but the moment we took action, danger found her. She wants us to apologize and compensate her for her emotional distress." "Is that so? Compensate her?" Qin Mo chuckled and looked at the youngster lying on the bed. His eyes were so cold that they seemed to be covered in frost. "Since she doesn't have morals, I'll teach her a lesson. It's not wrong to help a major suspect escape. After all, the ignorant are innocent. But now that she knows everything, she's still acting like this. Let's go through the legal process. Even if she's underage, there will be a children's center for her." Director Huang's fingers twitched, but in the end he decided to voice his concern. "Her mother has been waiting outside and her family doesn't seem to be well off. If we go through the legal process, people might say you are using your power to oppress her. Then tell them that I'm very glad that I have the power to send these unrepentant people to prison." Qin Mo's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Who told them that they can get away with their crimes just because they are weak? They admit to their crimes and accuse others when they don't admit it. They are inhumane. This has nothing to do with strength, wealth or age. If we don't stop her from committing a grave crime, her mother will be the one to suffer." Director Huang straightened. "I know what to do. I have been an official for too long and I have too many concerns. I will let her meet her mother first." After the call, Director Huang got someone to call the mother who had been waiting outside the entire day. The mother hadn't eaten for an entire day and her hair was a mess. The moment she entered, she held onto the girl's hand. "Are you all right?" The girl hated her mother for not washing her hair or putting on makeup. Right now it was even worse. but she still had to cry and complain about how wrong she was. The mother felt terrible and wanted to hug her child. Someone told me just now. You have to bear the consequences of this. Consequences? The girl's expression immediately changed. What consequences do I have to bear? What did I do wrong? Do I have to bear the consequences? The mother looked at her child and was about to speak. I know they want to use their power to oppress others. The girl was filled with hatred. In the end, you have no money. Don't you know how to dress up before going out? You are being looked down upon. Have you ever thought about me? Director Huang stood behind the mother. Since the incident, the mother had used up all the methods she could think of. She had been sitting outside the entire time. Even those who were involved would feel touched. He hadn't expected the girl to say such words. Did she not see that her mother was tired and haggard? I won't go to the children's detention center. These people keep saying that this person is guilty and that person is guilty. I will help whoever I want. The girl laughed coldly. Aren't they bullying me because I am a weak person? If you want to hide and not retaliate, I dare. The mother shook her eyes. She couldn't say a word. At that moment, the figure's words appeared in front of her eyes once again. Chapter 1060. Because there are countless people like your daughter who are accomplices. The last sentence. The mother's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't educated. If it was in the past, she would have thought that it was because she was uneducated that she raised her daughter like this. But before this, she had seen the video. The mother of the perpetrator. That person had the same background as her. Many people said that she was doing this to get money. But in reality, it was all because of her mother. She understood that the corpse had yet to turn cold, and justice had yet to be served. The one who was hurt was her daughter, so how could she sleep? She didn't even dare to believe that her daughter would defend someone who took away the rights of others. It was only now that things were crystal clear. Help whoever you want to help. Don't differentiate between right and wrong. Don't care who you hurt. When had she ever taught her daughter that? The mother didn't understand. Perhaps such a problem would never be solved. That was because the girl was still instigating. Mom, go find them and say that they are bullying the weak. The mother was probably born weak and was used to obeying her daughter. She didn't say a word and just covered her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Oh right, when you go find them, remember to wash your hair. How many times have I told you to bring a bag outside? Don't let others think that we are poor. If my classmates see it, how can I stay in school? When Director Huang heard this, he couldn't take it anymore. He walked out, his expression never so stern. He looked at the girl with a deep gaze. The girl was caught and was stunned for a moment. Then she did what she had to do. These words were all recorded. The members of the Key Case Investigation Unit felt like their worldview was going to shatter when they heard this. Were they getting old? What was wrong with kids nowadays? How could they not differentiate between right and wrong? You used your weakness to hurt others and don't know how to repent. You aren't just insulting the victim, you are also insulting your mother. Director Huang took a step forward. Why did I arrest you? I put aside my identity to talk to you. It's simple, because you committed a crime. What's more terrifying is your way of thinking. Is being weak the right thing to do? I don't have money, so I want to rob you. I don't have a boyfriend, but your boyfriend is not bad, so I want to rob you. I'm too weak, but you're famous, so I want to rob you. How can you say that I'm wrong? I'm so weak and kind, so if you say that I'm wrong, you're just using your power to oppress me. Child, the most important thing in life is to have a conscience. Obviously you don't have one. If you do too many evil things, retribution will come. With that, Director Huang walked out of the room. The girl was still unconvinced, so she took it out on her mother. Her words became more and more unpleasant. The mother stood there with a blank look on her face. Many people threw away their headphones, unable to continue listening. Director Huang arranged for the mother and daughter to meet to make the mother feel better. Now it seemed that, what a person is like. It has nothing to do with family or upbringing or wealth. It was related to the heart. If it was completely black, there was no way to save it. Send her to the children's center. Director Huang had never been so determined. At this moment, the door of the crime squad opened as well. Someone came to visit. His surname was Bai and he was a well-known lawyer hired by Wuxia. Chapter 1061. Lawyer Bai's voice was neither fast nor slow. Director Huang coughed. The crime squad's funds are still needed to arrest people. What he meant was that he didn't have the funds to hire an expensive lawyer like Lawyer Bai to represent them. Director Huang, it seems like you've misunderstood me. Even though I value money as much as my life, I'm more than willing to take on such lawsuits for free because... Mr. Bai smiled. I like to beat dogs. Director Huang, you don't have to do it, you've already won with your eloquence. The night sky darkened. Wang Chuanlei wouldn't be unprepared. He would destroy other evidence, cut ties and say something at the right time. This was something everyone in the industry knew. But he was being watched, he wouldn't do anything personally. But at this stage, anyone who was related to him would want to protect him. Fighting for time was the key to winning the case. Once the truth of the case was revealed, the smaller cases involved would be determined as well. They had probably waited too long for this day. The crime squad members hid in the office, eating instant noodles as they searched for evidence. Every time they found something, they would reveal a delighted smile. Then they would take a huge mouthful of noodles. There was nothing more satisfying than that. They had chosen this profession. It was probably for this moment. To send the culprit to jail. Because only by punishing the culprit and restoring the truth could the survivors have hope. In reality, both Rao Rong and the old mother hugging her daughter's corpse. One of them had lost his father while the other had to send off his daughter. Both of them were hanging on by a thread of qi. They couldn't be defeated. They had to persevere. They couldn't allow the culprit to be punished. They couldn't be defeated. The old mother still had someone by her side. But Rao Rong had been relying on himself for the past year. Some people said that they couldn't see the shadow of the youth who had hugged his teammate with one arm, the radiant smile on his face anymore. Indeed, they couldn't see it anymore. All that was left of him was a pool of blood. The blood feud couldn't be appeased if it wasn't avenged. They had probably waited too long for this day. The crime squad members stretched lazily and walked out of the station, planning to calm down for a smoke. Rao Rong was standing outside, wearing a black coat that seemed to have been worn for a long time. Those who knew it looked familiar when they saw it. When they thought about it carefully, they remembered that the person who had led them liked to wear this coat to carry out missions. Rao Rong walked over with one hand in his pocket, his handsome face calm. I'm here to bring you evidence, everything regarding Wang Chuanlei. The ash fell from the cigarette, and the person who heard this was almost burned by the ash. Happiness came too easily. Originally, he thought that he would have to stay up all night and there might not be anything that he could use. Right now, all his worries could be put to rest. Because Rao Rong was involved. 3 o'clock in the morning. Qin family. The young man lying on the bed had his handsome face turned sideways. His pale white lips moved slightly, and the sweat on his forehead never stopped. His dreams were muddled, especially the water, which always gave people the feeling that he was going to drown. Chapter 1062. It was a habit that she had developed over the years. The moment she woke up, she would always be in a state of alert. Bo Jio had to shake him to clear her vision. But before she could do anything, a slightly cold hand touched her head and gently squeezed it. Even his voice was deep and magnetic as if he hadn't slept all night. Is your head not feeling well? A long time ago, someone had said that if young Master Qin could be gentle, just his voice alone could mesmerize people. Bo Jio swayed in his melodious voice, her consciousness slowly returning. When she realized where she was, her tensed body relaxed. Brother Mo? It's me. Qin Mo lowered his gaze, kissing her hair. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere else? Bo Jio reached out and pointed at her own head. There was a hint of unhappiness on her handsome face. At that moment, it was as if a child had gotten into a fight outside and wanted his parents to pay attention to him. Qin Mo's fingers didn't move away from the head. The strength he used to massage it was comfortable. Concussion after the explosion. Sleep for a while more, it will be better in the morning. MMH. Bo Jio nodded and fell asleep. That was why he said that he was like a child, asking for candy and then sleeping. This time she slept very comfortably. She held onto Qin Mo's sleeve with one hand. Her hair was wet with sweat, but it didn't affect her handsome face at all. There was one main point. In 2 days the Almighty would be hers. There was no need to worry about a minor concussion. As for the things she was concerned about, Bo Jio believed the Almighty would be able to handle them. That was true. Qin Mo had never left the youngster's side, but he had been commanding the entire time. Everyone working so hard for so long just for one thing, to send the murderer to prison. Old people often say that the present cannot be compared to their time. Living conditions were better, but people's bravery was gone. If this had happened to them, they wouldn't have had the chance to speak after the crime had been committed. It was because he had an accomplice that Wang Chuanlei believed he had a chance of survival. The two cases were combined into one and then used to finalize the case. Whether the plagiarist only plagiarized or betrayed the original work after plagiarizing might not change the punishment much. But no matter what the truth was, it had to be made public. 7 in the morning. The crime squad tidied up the records and evidence Rao Rong had sent over. 8 o'clock in the morning. Although everyone was tired after a night, there was a spark in their eyes. This time, the members of the Major Crimes Division didn't rest. It could be said that they were all waiting for the same result. Rao Rong walked through the main entrance of the court. After entering, he still saw many people trying to protect him. They kept saying that even if their almighty plagiarized, it wasn't wrong. One case was divided into two sides. Walking in front of Rao Rong was the original novel's mother. She acted as if she hadn't heard the voices around her, and her gaze was firm, because she believed that there would always be a place that would give her justice. When Rao Rong saw this scene, he glanced sideways at the people who were still protecting the criminal. He walked past them, but he had never wished for victory more than now. He had already been suppressed by these accomplices once. This time it wouldn't happen again. He believed that with Chinamo around, I won't let anyone get away with it. He pushed the door open and stood against the light. Chapter 1063. The judge spoke and the lawyers returned to their seats. The people sitting below were all observers. Rao Rong stood there nonchalantly. But sometimes, even during the trial, the criminal might not admit to the crime. For example, Wang Chuanlei, before the trial, he would think of a way to escape. Everyone involved in the case knew what was going on. Wang Chuanlei probably thought he could do it again based on his past experience. His lawyer had also prepared a lot of materials, but these materials were basically useless. After the trial, the lawyer avoided the main point when he was asked about the reply to the text. At most, it can only be said to be a leak. Without confirming the other party's identity, the crime can't be established. Besides, I doubt the other party's evidence collection is legitimate. Director Huang had expected such a defense. Over the years, there were too many people who were used to quibbling. The judge discussed with the people beside him before replying, "The crime squad doesn't have any other evidence." Yes. Rao Rong walked over, his gaze landing on Wang Chuanlei. A year ago, Wang Chuanlei won the honor of killing someone and used this honor to rise through the ranks. I can provide all the evidence. Ever since he had seen Rao Rong, Wang Chuanlei's expression had changed. He had indeed wanted to be wary of Rao Rong, but in his heart, he didn't think Rao Rong would amount to anything. Even if Rao Rong had something, it wouldn't be a threat to him. After all, he hadn't had the chance to show the evidence back then. Some people were still protecting him and they didn't believe in the evidence. Wang Chuanlei didn't know that it was because of his lowly life. Rao Rong was no longer the hot-blooded youngster who believed in everyone. Now he had stepped forward, all for the sake of getting justice back. This time, no one would be able to stop him. As they exchanged glances, Wang Chuanlei seemed to understand something. The hatred in Rao Rong's eyes made him lose his composure. The judge ordered for the evidence to be presented. Rao Rong's current situation was unique. Almost everyone knew that his father had been framed due to the previous exposure. It was just that there was no way to confirm who the person behind this was. We need to verify the evidence. That was because there wasn't any personal grudge involved. Even if everyone knew what was going on, they had to have enough evidence before they could be sentenced. The verification of evidence had to be done according to procedures. No one knew what would happen during this period of time. Just as the judge was about to announce that the case would be adjourned for a retrial tomorrow. "There's other evidence." Suddenly, a clear and distinct voice came from the door. It was a young man wearing a dark red t-shirt and matching earrings with shimmering black fragments. His handsome face was exposed to everyone's sight. Rao Rong's eyes widened when he saw the slight curve of his lips and the way he strode over with one hand on his belt. "Bojio." She sat up from the bed with a white bandage wrapped around her head. She looked like a beautiful, sickly man. Chapter 1064. It was just 5 words. Wang Chuanlei almost lost his footing. Everything else was fine. Other than Rao Rongqing, who else could prove that he hadn't killed anyone? When checking the evidence, he could take this time to clean up the loose ends. But drug trafficking. Everyone knew what this meant. Director Huang was undoubtedly the most excited among them. He turned around and looked at the tall man on his left. I have to say, even though you two are quite annoying, you're still so useful at the crucial moment. Chinamo didn't speak, just glancing at him. On the other hand, Lawyer Bai pushed his spectacles up and walked down the stairs. He probably knew that the high school student who hired him would appear. However, he didn't expect it to be like this. His head was broken? Bojio noticed Lawyer Bai's gaze. How should she put it? There wasn't anything wrong with her head, she just had a slight concussion. She wanted to come out, but the Almighty was worried and personally wrapped a white bandage around her. At that time, the Almighty looked at her as if he was looking at a naughty child and even told her to sit still. What else could she say? As a domineering CEO, she had to give in to her little secretary, even if she had to go out to work. But she also protested, it's just a concussion, there's no need to make it so eye-catching, right? Didn't the novels you read tell you that sometimes a concussion can cause amnesia? If the Almighty didn't have a sharp tongue, he wouldn't be the Almighty. The fact that he liked to dig up her dark history probably couldn't be changed. Now that she thought about it, she wanted to reply, you're the one who lost your memory, not me. Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze and roughly understood what was going on. His lips curled into a smile as he walked towards the judge. Since the beginning, the other party has been denying the evidence we have provided, but he has never said why he leaked the secret. Having such a loophole in a confidential meeting is itself a dereliction of duty. Moreover, more and more evidence shows that he not only leaked the secret, but also committed murder and drug trafficking. We will file a lawsuit. Please sentence him to death in accordance with the law. When the word death sentence came out of Lawyer Bai's mouth, Wang Chuanlei's legs gave way and his face turned extremely pale. More importantly, every piece of evidence presented by the USB drive pointed to the truth. Wang Chuanlei couldn't escape. Rao Rong's tightly clenched fists finally loosened after the judge's verdict. But at this moment, however, the other party's lawyer retorted and pointed out a point. Regardless of whether your father is a hero or not, no matter how wronged he is, you've joined a criminal organization. Even if you haven't committed any atrocities, Rao Rong should still be imprisoned. Hearing this, Bojio tightened her grip. Lawyer Bai wanted to say something. Rao Rong removed his jacket, stretching his arms out. He was wearing a white shirt, his back straight. He did not say a word. However, she had tacitly agreed to the suggestion of sending him to prison. Director Huang wanted to step forward. Chinamo reached out to block him. Rao Rong lifted his lids, glancing at the handcuffs on his wrists. Suddenly he broke into a smile, clean and gentle, just like the youngster who had led a strong esports team, waved the mouse and won the honor. I don't regret it. When I come out again, Chinamo, I will be as innocent as you. He had chosen this method to avenge his father's death. Chapter 1065. In this world there was no turning back. Perhaps at the very beginning. If the people who had protected Wang Chuanlei had been able to distinguish right from wrong, they wouldn't have forced Rao Rong to choose such a method of farewell. But there was no maybe. It's all over, he thought. He could finally have a good sleep. Let go of the hatred and sleep. They brushed past each other. Rao Rong paused beside the youngster's feet, speaking in a voice only the two of them could hear. Thank you, Z. It wasn't Spade Z. It was Z. The intelligent Bojio quickly realized that he had found out about her identity. After all, it was possible that the mission Fan Jia had given Rao Rong was to infiltrate the esports industry and target her. Rao Rong must have noticed something during their interaction. Bojio didn't reply, she didn't admit or deny it. Rao Rong smiled. There's another case. Let me know the outcome once it's over. Perhaps only those who had experienced it would understand empathy. Rao Rong paid attention to that case. It was because he knew that there was a group of people who couldn't tell right from wrong that were protecting a criminal. He knew that someone would become the second him. He knew very well what it was like to feel that way. The evidence was in his hands, but there was no way to sue heaven. He was young and could handle it. How could that mother endure such heart-wrenching pain? Bojio glanced up. Just as he was about to disappear, she said, "Don't worry." Okay, clang. The metal door slammed shut. They glanced at each other. Without hesitation they walked to the next door. Lawyer Bai was with them so they could speak. This case was difficult because the system wasn't perfect. Fortunately, there was enough evidence. But even so, the opposing party's lawyer still asked a very shameless question on the spot. Before saying that someone else stole it, can the original author guarantee that he didn't steal it? After all, there are many works of the same genre. It's not valid to say that the author plagiarized the work. That's right, it doesn't make sense. So what if my almighty plagiarized it? It's better than the original author. I like his writing. You sure are troublesome. You just won't let go of almighty Wu Men. You're bullying my almighty. Probably for money. When the judge heard this, he frowned and looked at the mother. The lawyer took advantage of these voices. Also, my client wasn't as popular as the other party in the beginning. Is the other party trying to use his popularity to bully my client? Bojio knew that no matter how uncultured her mother was, she could still understand what others were saying and understood the situation. When she looked up, her eyes met the man's lips, which were about to break. Bojio stuffed a hand into her pocket. Suddenly, she picked up the mop beside her and swung it towards the handle of the row of seats. The girls who were still talking froze. Bojio waved her left hand and knocked on it. There wasn't a hint of a smile in her eyes. Continue, I'm listening. Director Huang had tagged along. When he saw this scene, he shot Chinemo a look. It seemed to be saying, don't go too far with the person you're in charge of. This is a court. What if someone catches you? But reality proved that Bojio had a sense of propriety, her voice rising once more. Lawyer Bai, explain to them in detail what plagiarism is. Chapter 1066. Plagiarism is the act of stealing or modifying someone else's work, using the same method to copy the work completely or partially, or altering the form or content to a certain extent. Lawyer Bai walked forward. Firstly, the other party's defense is intentionally distorting the main body of the argument, using plagiarism as a joke. Under normal circumstances, plagiarism isn't determined based on the subject matter. There are many similar books like fantasy, CO, level up, esports, entertainment, etc. There might even be similarities due to the description, which is normal. But what isn't normal is when there is a plot unique to the original author. The other party's action is to use the original plot or add words to make it their own. This isn't a joke, it's a copy. Lawyer Bai spoke slowly, reading the sentence clearly. Also, the most important aspect of a work is the soul of the character, which is what we call the main character. It's simple, take the rebirth as an example. There isn't anything wrong with writing about a high school student, but our main character wears earrings, skateboards, likes to climb walls, and gets beaten up for being a gay. There are a bunch of overbearing CEO books on the bookshelf, which the main character uses as a black mark. This is an original plot, but why is it the same for your side? There are also other major plots that are copied and written in the hands of Your Excellency. Lawyer Bai paused for a moment before continuing. As for what you said about plagiarizing or not, it's your business if you don't care. After all, not everyone has a conscience. My point of view is that we can forgive unintentional mistakes, but we will never forgive those who plagiarize and then accuse the original. There's no point in pretending to be weak. What matters here is the truth, not acting. Sometimes, having a good voice was a good thing. Besides, every lawyer would clearly convey the message they wanted to convey. Some of them weren't convinced and wanted to speak up. The judge looked at the evidence, comparing it against every frame. Bojio stood at the side of the loudest, reminding Lawyer Bai, you forgot the most important point. Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze, his gaze landing on the mother who was forcing herself to stand up straight. According to our country's constitution, compensation is the rightful amount of compensation. Perhaps you've never heard of it, but during the trial, my guardian mentioned the amount of compensation, 1 renminbi. A beggar wouldn't even ask for such a small amount of money. After traveling for 36 days from the county to the provincial city, from the provincial city to here, I've put in so much effort. From start to end, all I want is justice. Of course, even if my guardian succeeds, you'll still say that you like both books and don't care how it came about. But remember, you'll always be an accomplice. Even Director Huang was stunned by what he heard. He turned towards Bojio. I finally witnessed the power of words. It's expensive after all. Bojio glanced at the time on her phone. Lawyer Bai really charged by the second, but the money spent was worth it since it would be able to control the situation. As Lawyer Bai's closing argument, he had said everything he needed to say. The three judges glanced at each other. Chapter 1067. These 5 minutes weren't peaceful at all. It wasn't easy to get a fair treatment for such a case in China. Besides, there were so many people protecting the other party. The funniest thing was that the defendant didn't even attend the hearing, only her representative appeared. This meant that all the pressure from the public was on the mother. She seemed especially calm at this moment. After 5 minutes, the hearing resumed. Her hands weren't as tense as before. She stood there innocently waiting for an answer. The judge announced, "The defendant is guilty of plagiarism." The mother didn't laugh, instead she reached out to cover her mouth. She wanted to cry, but she suppressed her emotions. She looked at her bracelet. "Daughter, did you hear that? Everything that should be returned to you has been returned to you." There would still be people who wouldn't accept the verdict and would complain. But at this moment it didn't seem to matter. Perhaps, those who couldn't tell right from wrong would never understand that they weren't being kind, they were being cruel. But that wasn't important anymore. Bojio watched as the mother's shoulders trembled and she started to cry uncontrollably. She stood there, not leaving. She placed the mop in her hands back to its original position. She didn't even bother to look at them. The entire case was announced in the newspaper. Although the details weren't revealed, the outcome was clear. Bojio stood outside for a while. She wanted to smoke. But when she reached into her pocket, she realized that she had promised the Almighty to quit smoking. She removed the candy wrapper and placed it in her mouth. The matter here was settled. It was time to plan in detail how she was going to kidnap the Almighty. Chinamo had expected to see a cold and listless fox. After all, the youngster's expression had started to show some emotions. He didn't expect to see the youngster rubbing his palms together when he turned around to see the youngster rubbing his fists in anticipation after telling him how to deal with the aftermath. "What are you up to again?" Chinamo walked over, pulling her towards him as he glanced at her head. Bojio felt that she didn't look good with such a curse on her. But she didn't want to lie, so she decided to compromise. "I'm thinking about the filming in America. I wonder how long it will take. You can ask about the schedule." Chinamo touched the bandage on the youngster's head and casually changed the topic. "Let's go back to sleep." Bojio had slept for a long time and was still energetic. "I just woke up. Do you want to play ball?" "I'm sleepy." Chinamo held her hand and walked forward as though there was no one else around. The two of them were still as compatible as ever. Bojio enjoyed watching the Almighty sleep. Who wouldn't like to watch him sleep? Besides, the Almighty was so domineering that he could only fall asleep hugging her as a pillow. He wouldn't allow her to run around. At noon, Bojio closed her eyes along with the Almighty. Later on, she also wanted to be more honest. As a result, the princess was always walking back and forth in front of her like a cat, snorting from time to time. Bojio suppressed the provocation with her brute force and pulled Princess out. It was commonly known as cat walking. Dusk was approaching. Many people in the courtyard were walking their dogs. Walking the cat? The princess' big flat cat face exploded. Chapter 1068. Bojio was slightly surprised when she received Lin Feng's call. "Senior, what's wrong? There's something that I need to discuss with you." For some reason, Lin Feng's tone sounded very different from other times. Bojio's fingers stilled. She held on to Princess, her voice calm. "Speak." "In less than half a month, Yun Hu will be leaving the country. He's talking to Feng Yi now. I think he's leaving the team." Lin Feng took a puff of his cigarette. Bojio wasn't sure where he was now. Actually, when Lin Feng had heard the news, he had wanted to discuss something with Feng Yi. He hadn't expected the office door to be left open, allowing him to hear everything. He has quite a number of fans. If he leaves the team just like that, there will definitely be a lot of people who won't understand. Lin Feng leaned against the wall, looking at his fingers. Even if they understand, no one will be able to accept it. Rather than letting the media spread the news, why don't we tell everyone? Bojio paused, returning to the previous question. Leaving the team? That's right, after he goes overseas, he definitely won't be able to undergo the same intensive training as before. Besides, he has always wanted to do research. Lin Feng's voice was calm. "I was the one who pulled him into the esports team." Bojio could sense Lin Feng's bad mood. She carried Princess up with one hand and poked him casually, the other holding onto her phone. "How do you intend to tell everyone?" As a cat of noble birth, Princess's big face was obviously helpless. His claws couldn't reach the youngster, everything was useless. Lin Feng smiled. "We can hold a farewell party and invite his fans. You can dress as a girl." Bojio took a moment before giving a direct answer. Even though Lin Feng was feeling down, he couldn't bring himself to feel depressed. The corners of his mouth twitched. "F***ck, don't we still have the Asian Cup?" It's less than a month, isn't it? In her heart, Supreme Alliance wouldn't be Supreme Alliance without anyone. Lin Feng tossed the cigarette into the bin and straightened his back. Feng Yi has discussed this with the organizers. With Supreme Alliance's current power, they aren't able to defend against external enemies. The Asian Cup concerns China's reputation and captain's condition is unknown. With Yunhu's withdrawal, we won't be able to win against the other Asian teams, much less the Japanese. Hence, he suggested for Xiangnan to participate in the Asian Cup. The organizers have already given a reply. Both teams are to prepare and we will see which team is stronger. He was already prepared to not participate in the competition. Bojio had an idea. At the same time, she understood that it wasn't appropriate for Supreme Alliance to continue fighting. Just as Lin Feng had said, Supreme Alliance had two generals that couldn't participate. The Asian Cup wasn't a domestic competition. Under such circumstances, sending Xiangnan out was the wisest choice. Feng Yi wouldn't have made this decision on his own. He must have asked the Almighty. Bojio lowered her lids. Every player's greatest wish was to fight for their country. It was just that everyone knew that the National League was probably the last battle. After this, no one knew how long it would take for Supreme Alliance to rise again. Chapter 1069. Yes, even if he had to leave openly. Rather than letting others speculate about him in the future, it would be better to bid farewell to everyone. I still have 3 days left. 3 days later, Brother Mo and I will head overseas to treat his hand. Bojio had always been a person of action. Let's think about how to organize the farewell party? Lin Feng blew his hair. That's simple, we can perform something. Piano? Bojio suggested. Lin Feng arched a brow. Little Spade, let's do something normal. Piano isn't normal? Bojio couldn't understand Senior Lin Feng's thoughts. Lin Feng replied, the venue will be cold, don't forget there will be fans. Alright, how do we contact the fans? Bojio asked. At this point, Lin Feng had an idea that he hadn't realized. Why don't we look for a fan meeting? Your official fan club president and my fan club president will be together. Then we'll ask Captain and Yunhu out. It would be better to discuss with them during this farewell meeting. Indeed. They had to be mentally prepared to leave the team. Lin Feng, on the other hand, wasn't naive. After you hang up, use your Weibo to contact your people. My Weibo is fake. Bojio pulled Princess back. Lin Feng spoke in a Beijing accent. You don't have to worry about that. Other fans might mistake you for someone else, but your official fan club leader wouldn't mistake you for someone else. When are you free today? Find a chance to meet her. We're only inviting local fans this time, so there won't be a lot of them. As for the program, aren't you the school hunk? MMH, Bojio replied faintly. Even if you want to sing, we have to sing together. Me? You want me to sing? Lin Feng wasn't bothered. If you have the courage to listen, I have the courage to sing. Bojio was still inexperienced and didn't understand that some people were so good at singing that they couldn't be taught. When she realized the problem, it was already too late. The more Lin Feng spoke, the more excited he became. Speaking of which, this is my first time meeting someone. As someone with experience, Bojio replied calmly, it's nothing, Brother Mo and I only got to know each other after we met. How can I be compared to you? I have the burden of being an idol. I'll go and contact someone first. Come out at 5 o'clock. Is there a problem? Lin Feng put away his bad mood. Bojio thought for a moment. She glanced up and scanned the walls of the Qin family's house. It wasn't easy for her to climb in, but no one would care if she climbed out. Sure. That's settled then. Where shall we meet? He had to tell them the location of the meeting. 5 p.m.? Bojio took a moment. Uda, you don't have to queue at that time. The atmosphere wouldn't be awkward if they talked while eating. In some ways she was really witty. But there was one thing. Contacting fans on Weibo had to be low-key. According to Lin Feng's intentions, he didn't want everyone to know first. With that in mind, she decided to walk the cat for another round and use this time to contact someone. Princess's heart was really tired. With a big round face, she was resolutely staring at a Samoyed. Meow, why are they all taller than me? The old men who were walking their dogs also thought it was interesting that the young man was walking with the cat in the yard. Chapter 1070. At this moment, Bojio noticed the gazes of the old men. She decided to keep a low profile. She carried Princess and sat on the steps. Brother, let's discuss something. Who's your brother? Aren't you embarrassed to call me brother? Where's your bottom line? Meow. I can't accept it. Princess raised his big face and paced back and forth. He felt that walking in circles wasn't bad. All the tall men left in fear when they saw him. Not bad, not bad. Bojio couldn't understand why a cat would be so proud. She watched as he challenged Samyed valiantly with his claws extended. Samyed didn't even look at him. He ignored him and lowered his head to sniff the bushes. Helpless, the princess even turned her head around and raised her face high. She looked as if she had been scared away by this young master. Bojio felt that it was better to go through Weibo. After all, it was tiring to watch a cat's inner drama. Bojio logged into her account and password. Due to the overwhelming number of messages, her phone was stuck. Fortunately, the official fan account was easy to find. She just didn't know if the person on Weibo was there at this time. After all, she couldn't use WeChat all the time. Bojio moved her fingers and sent a question mark over. She thought she would have to wait for a while. Unexpectedly, there was an instant reply. It's a living adult. Since it's so lively, it shouldn't be a tortoise, Bojio replied. The person on the other end was obviously agitated. Sir, I'm her secretary. The general manager is out. Tell her to meet me at 5 in the afternoon at Huda. The other presidents of the fan club will be there too. If she isn't free, she can leave me a message. Bojio sucked on a lollipop. After she was done typing, she leaned back with one arm and sat lazily. She freed one hand and caressed Princess's chin. Brother, come, let's continue our conversation. Help me set up a cover at 5 o'clock. Princess wouldn't agree to it. He started his inner drama again. Her Weibo chimed. Bojio retracted her hand. There were only 3 words. I'll be there. Okay. After she was done, Bojio stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket. Before she entered, she didn't forget to size up the walls and balcony. The princess narrowed her eyes and extended her claws again. What do you want? Why are you so interested in my nest? The princess nests on the balcony. Bojio lowered her lids and headed up to the 2nd floor alone. The Almighty was still asleep. Soft light shone in, creating a halo of light. His messy black hair only made him look more elegant and noble. That was all the beauty in the world could do. Bojio walked over and found a spot that belonged to her. She turned sideways and wanted to lie down. At this moment, his wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Even his head was pressed against his chest, filled with the scent of peppermint and sandalwood. I heard from the guys in the military that you're a good cat walker. Bojio's gaze shifted, landing on the blinking phone screen. I didn't expect Brother Emo to have such a wide circle of friends. We're from the same compound, it's only natural that we know each other. Chin Emo didn't open his eyes. He was probably still sleepy. But at this moment, his voice was hoarse and deep. He told me that your little friend is very interesting. He's walking the cat behind us. He's an old general. That you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.